Chapter 718. You're going to die today. Jiaoli sneered and shouted. 10. 10 breaths of time has passed. More on you. Since you haven't made your choice, you can only die now. Everyone attack. Attack with all your might. As long as we kill Morongyu and seize the Hichu Luoshu, we'll have made a great contribution. Jiaoli roared and launched a palm attack at Morongyu. The rest of the 50 immortal venerables also rushed to attack. They all knew what the Hichu Luoshu was. It was a treasure that even GMO wanted. Once they got the treasure, they would definitely get a lot of benefits after giving it to GMO. They might even become gods in the future. Therefore, everyone went crazy. They unleashed all their might and attacked Morongyu fiercely. A terrifying force broke out, shattering the void in an instant. The whole world seemed to be trembling. At this moment, the faces of everyone in Feng City behind Morongyu's back changed. Although they had absolute confidence in Morongyu, the attackers were all immortal venerables. Moreover, there were more than 50 of them. No matter how strong Morongyu was, he was no match for these people. Therefore, they all looked at Morongyu with a worried expression. Some people even cried out in alarm. Activate the Great City Defense Formation. Morongyu calmly transmitted his voice to He, Hu, and the others. At the same time, Morongyu's figure flickered and disappeared. Asterisk Hong Long Long. Asterisk countless terrifying energies poured down, instantly annihilating the space where Morongyu had been standing. Large swathes of the void turned into nothingness. However, they couldn't do anything to Morongyu. At this moment, Morongyu had entered Feng City. Jiaoli naturally noticed the situation. Immediately, he roared with a ferocious face, "Kill! Destroy the heavenly court and kill Morongyu! Kill! Kill! Kill!" As he spoke, Jiaoli struck out with his palm again and again. He used his strongest attack and bombarded the heavenly court's great city guarding formation. Balls of light erupted from the bombardment of the grand formation. The other 50-plus immortal venerables from the Divine Union also made their move. Immediately, a terrifying force poured down on the formation of the heavenly court, causing it to tremble violently and emit terrifying sounds. Morongyu's face was gloomy as he waved his hands continuously. Grade 9 immortal meridians were thrown out one by one, as if they were free, becoming the source of power for the array formations. However, with the grand array being bombarded continuously, the consumption of power was extremely terrifying. In less than 15 minutes, the power of a grade 9 immortal meridian was completely depleted. One could only imagine how terrifying the consumption of energy was. However, even so, the Great City Barrier Array continued to emit cracking sounds. The array formation had reached its limit. No matter how many immortal meridians Morongyu had, he wouldn't be able to sustain it. After all, although the array formation he had set up was powerful, Morongyu's strength wasn't strong enough. Moreover, the power of Jiao Li and the others was too terrifying. Of course, if Morongyu's strength had reached the immortal venerate realm, the array formation he had set up wouldn't be afraid of the dozens of immortal venerables outside. However, he was only at the immortal venerate realm now. No matter how powerful the array formation was, there was still a limit. Morongyu knew this. At the same time, Jiao Li and the others also knew this. He Hu and the others were also aware of this problem. Attack, attack. Let's see how long they can last. Jiao Li roared ferociously, commanding those people to attack the heavenly court. However, Jiao Li had already stopped attacking. However, he was still glaring at Morongyu in Feng City with resentment. Sacred Master, the other party is too strong. I'm afraid we won't be able to hold on for long. Xiaohua walked up and said in a deep voice. The others also walked over and looked at Morongyu with a worried expression. This was true even for those immortal emperors. Although they were immortal emperors, the dozens of immortal venerables outside were much stronger than them. If they rushed out, they would only be courting death. After glancing at the crowd, Morongyu said faintly, "Although they are strong, it's impossible for them to break through the heavenly court. This time, I'm going to make them suffer." I want everyone in the immortal world to know that our heavenly court isn't something that anyone can afford to offend. Today, I'm going to make the divine union suffer heavy losses. How dare they attack our heavenly court? They are really courting death. Murong-Yu's voice was cold. By the time he finished speaking, his killing intent was already soaring. Sacred Master, you have a trump card? Xiahou Zhuo asked excitedly. The others also looked at Murong-Yu with excitement. Xiahou Zhuo and the others felt very aggrieved when they were attacked by people who were much stronger than them. If Murong-Yu could kill some of them, they would feel very satisfied. Murong-Yu nodded and looked indifferently at Jiao Li and the others outside Feng City. Those people were attacking the heavenly court crazily. Murong-Yu's eyebrows flashed coldly as the killing intent in his heart intensified. If the old man was here, he would be able to kill one or two of these people. However, one shouldn't rely on others too much. Even without the old man, I can still turn the world upside down today. Murong-Yu's heart was filled with rage and helplessness. Although he was strong, he only had 700,000 dragon power. He could contend against ordinary immortal venerables, but it would be difficult for him to kill them. Moreover, it wasn't just one immortal venerate attacking the heavenly court, but more than 50 of them. If Murong-Yu dared to go out, these people would be able to blast him to pieces. With a thought, the golden bow of heaven and earth appeared in his hand. Suddenly, a vast and powerful but restrained aura was released. Everyone was shocked. Although they didn't feel the power of the bow of heaven and earth, they knew that this divine bow was not simple. Sacred Lord, is this a divine weapon? Xiahou Zhuo felt that the bow of heaven and earth was much stronger than his brick emperor weapon, so he couldn't help but ask. Perhaps, Murong-Yu said indifferently. What grade was the bow of heaven and earth? Murong-Yu still didn't know. However, he felt that whether it was the bow of heaven and earth, the Yin-Yang Cauldron, the Hichu Luo Shu, or the Heavenly Punishment Order, these treasures had no grade. It wasn't that they didn't have a grade, but that they were existences that had surpassed all grades. The bow of heaven and earth. Murong-Yu planned to use the bow of heaven and earth. After all, the fact that he had the Hichu Luo Shu had been exposed, making him an enemy of almost the entire world. Revealing the bow of heaven and earth now wouldn't make the situation worse. Most importantly, Murong-Yu felt that he now had the strength to protect the bow of heaven and earth. Otherwise, once he shot out the bow of heaven and earth, it would cause a fight among the celestial primes and almost be taken away. Even now, he still wants to kill me. Bow of heaven and earth, heaven-shaking arrow. Today, I will let you drink the blood of the celestial primes. Murong-Yu shouted in his heart. With a flip of his hand, the human arrow of the 3 heaven, earth, and human quaking arrows appeared in his hand. The human arrow was extremely powerful when it came to killing human lives. Even if it was now, they were still human beings. The moment the bow of heaven and earth and the heaven-shaking arrow appeared, Jiao Li, who was outside Feng City, couldn't help but shudder. Damn it, how can this be? Can Murong-Yu overturn the heavens? Jiao Li shook his head, puzzled. Murong-Yu took a deep breath, raised his strength to the limit, and then aimed his eyes at Jiao Li. As the saying goes, to catch bandits, first catch the ringleader. Murong-Yu intended to kill Jiao Li with one blow. Murong-Yu's body exuded a powerful aura. He suddenly shouted and pulled the bow to the fullest in an instant. Swish! The moment he pulled the bow, the strength in his body was instantly sucked dry. It was really too terrifying. One should know that the Tree of Life was already very powerful at this time. It could endlessly absorb the free, chaotic energy from the void to replenish Murong-Yu's body, making Murong-Yu's strength limitless, like a torrential river that would never be exhausted. However, when Murong-Yu pulled the bow, all his strength was directly swallowed by the bow of heaven and earth. If the Tree of Life hadn't started to replenish his strength, Murong-Yu would have been unable to pull the bow of heaven and earth to the fullest. Moreover, Murong Yu had already started to burn his ninth-grade immortal meridians. Under the two-pronged attack, Murong Yu's strength was not exhausted, nor was it interrupted. This also proved the terror of the bow of heaven and earth. The stronger one was, the more strength one needed. What's going on? Why do I feel a sense of trepidation and extreme danger? Jiao Li, who was outside Feng City, shook his head, trying to dispel the bad feeling in his heart. However, the more he shook his head, the more intense the feeling was. He even sensed the aura of death. Chi! At this moment, Murong Yu let go. After a short and dazzling sound, the sky's shaking arrow disappeared in a flash of golden light in front of Murong Yu and the others. It had actually escaped into the void. This feeling, Jiao Li was very irritated. Just as he didn't know what had happened, a golden light appeared in front of him out of thin air, and the aura of death enveloped Jiao Li's body, giving him an illusion that he couldn't escape. Jiao Li's pupils shrank, and then he roared. With a punch, he knocked down the unprepared celestial venerable beside him and blasted towards the golden light that was shooting towards him. At the same time, Jiao Li turned around and fled. Boom! The celestial venerable was sent flying by Jiao Li. Just as he was furious and didn't know what had happened, the sky-shaking arrow, which had turned into a ball of golden light, had ruthlessly pierced into his body, piercing through his heart. Rumble! In an instant, the sky above Feng Province was filled with blood clouds, and blood-red lightning raged, and blood rain poured down. This was the fall of a celestial venerable expert, and the heavens and earth mourned and wept for him. Congratulations, young master. You've obtained 100 million stars. At the same time, Steward Tian's voice rang in Murong Yu's ears. Chapter 719. The change of heaven and earth meant that an immortal venerable had fallen. Just as the entire Feng province was shrouded in bloody clouds, bloody rain, and bloody lightning, both the heavenly court and the divine union were stunned. An immortal venerable had fallen, just like that? Everyone was in disbelief. However, the expressions on both sides were different. Those from the heavenly court were pleasantly surprised, while those from the divine union were horrified. After killing an immortal venerable, the sky-shaking arrow turned into a ray of golden light and flew towards the heavenly court. Take it down. At this moment, those immortal venerables finally reacted. One of the powerhouses roared and reached out with his hand, grabbing at the golden light. What a terrifying divine arrow. It can even kill an immortal venerable easily. If I could get my hands on it, my strength will definitely rise to another level. An immortal venerable looked at the sky-shaking arrow and stretched out his hand to grab the arrow. In fact, it wasn't just one or two who were greedy. At the same time, other than Jiao Li, everyone else stretched out their hands to grab the sky-shaking arrow. This arrow actually killed one of our men. We must take it down and avenge our men. An immortal venerable roared and turned into a ray of light to intercept the arrow. Yes, we must take it down. Kill the person who shot the arrow, and we can avenge our men. Another immortal venerable roared. These shameless people are obviously greedy for the divine arrow. They actually said that they want to avenge their men. How shameless. Are they really immortal venerables? Shameless people. The people of the divine union are all shameless. I have finally seen it for myself. Many people in the heavenly court were mocking these shameless immortal venerables. However, those immortal venerables were indifferent. To them, these mocking words were nothing. The most important thing was their strength. As long as they were strong enough, who would dare to mock them? Unlike these people who were fighting over the sky-shaking arrow, as if they had been injected with chicken blood, Jiao Li had retreated far away. He was inexplicably shocked, and his face was alternating between green and red. Apparently, he had been frightened too much. Bastard! What kind of arrow is this? It can even kill an immortal venerable? Jiao Li's heart was filled with fear and trepidation. If it wasn't for his quick reaction, and if it wasn't for the fact that he had an immortal venerable by his side, he would have been the one to die. Could this be Murong Yu's trump card? Apart from Hichu Luo Shu, is there really such a terrifying divine arrow? Jiao Li's eyes flashed with a cold light, but he unconsciously took a few steps back. He also coveted that divine arrow. However, he didn't dare to think about those divine arrows. He was scared out of his wits. Hearing Steward Tion's words, Moroniu couldn't help but tremble. Then, his face revealed a shocked expression. Steward Tion, you're saying that I obtained 100 million stars by killing an immortal venerable? Yes, young master. By killing an immortal reverend, you can obtain 100 million star points. The Tianguan Alliance said. Very good. Star points are good stuff. There are more than 50 people outside. If I kill all of them, I can easily obtain billions of star points. Moroniu's eyes lit up as he looked at those immortal venerables who were trying to snatch the heaven-shaking arrow. In his eyes, these immortal venerables were no longer immortal venerables, but stars. These reckless things. Today, I'll turn all of you into my stars. Moroniu sneered. Then he stretched out his hand and grabbed at the void. Arrow come. Swoosh. At this moment, the heaven-shaking arrow that everyone was fighting over suddenly trembled. Its speed instantly increased by countless times, avoiding the interception of everyone's power and entering the void once again. In the next moment, the heaven-shaking arrow appeared in Moroniu's hand. Bout an arrow. Done in one go. With a chi sound, Zhan Jianjian turned into a golden light and shot out into the void. When the heaven-shaking arrow was shot out, Moroniu's hand made a grabbing motion in the air. In the next moment, another heaven-shaking arrow appeared. Chi. Two beams of golden light shot into the void, locking onto the few immortal venerables in front of them and shooting towards them. Now, Moroniu had already regarded these people as stars. Therefore, he gave up on capturing the leader first to capture the bandits. After all, he would get 100 million star points no matter who he killed. Furthermore, given Jiao Li's level of cunning and his status in the Divine Union, Moroniu could not guarantee that he did not have any trump cards on him. Seeing that more than 50 immortal venerables were unable to stop the heaven-shaking arrow and had been taken back by Moroniu, many of them were disappointed. These people were a little disappointed, but more than that, they were greedy. The more powerful the heaven-shaking arrow was, the better. Kill. Break into the heavenly court. Kill Moroniu and seize the divine bow and divine arrow. When those immortal venerables saw that the heaven-shaking arrow had been taken away by Moroniu, all of them roared and unleashed a powerful force towards the heavenly court. However, right at that moment, they saw Moroniu knocking an arrow on his bow and releasing it. Be careful! Everyone roared and instantly increased their strength to the maximum. However, even though they had increased their strength to the maximum, they obviously did not take the heaven-shaking arrow seriously. They felt that no matter how powerful the heaven-shaking arrow was, could it really kill them at their peak? At this point, 3 immortal venerates had been shot to death. What a terrifying divine arrow. We are no match for it. Jiao Li, who had already retreated, said with a frightened look. Retreat, retreat quickly. Jiao Li roared and turned to flee in panic. He was really scared. Go! The rest of the immortal venerates were also scared out of their wits. They roared and turned to flee. However, Moroniu continued to shoot arrows and killed another 3 immortal venerates. However, after he killed the 3 immortal venerables, the rest of them had already fled without a trace. However, Moroniu had also killed 9 immortal venerates. 9 immortal venerates. Everyone in Feng City was stunned by the news. What was the concept of 9 immortal venerates? In the current immortal world, there were only a few immortal venerates among the countless immortals. However, Moroniu had killed 9 of them. Immortal venerates were the supreme immortals. However, they seem to have been killed by Moroniu's arrows. Was Moroniu too strong, or were those immortal venerates too weak? Moroniu was very strong, but those immortal venerates were even stronger. The Holy Lord is mighty. The Holy Lord is unrivaled in the world. A heavenly court disciple suddenly roared after being shocked for a long time. The Holy Lord is mighty. The Holy Lord is unrivaled in the world. For a moment, the crowd seemed to have been ignited as they roared one by one. At this point, Murong-yu had reached an unprecedented height in their hearts. Even those so-called gods were not as tall as Murong-yu. In their hearts, Murong-yu had long surpassed those so-called gods. Sacred Master, are we going to chase after them and wipe out Jiao Li, Ji, and the Divine Union? A heavenly court disciple asked excitedly as he rushed over. Scram! Heihu roared and kicked the man away. You brat, go chase after them yourself. Well, Sir Black Tiger, pretend I didn't say anything. Just pretend that I never appeared. The disciple chuckled. With a flash of his body, he disappeared on the spot. Heihu, you'll take care of the aftermath. As for the families of those killed, compensate them according to the rules. Murong-yu instructed, then disappeared in a flash. Chapter 720. Murong-yu couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood the moment he appeared in the heavenly court's main hall. He was injured. I didn't expect the bow of Cosmos and Sky, shaking arrow, to be so powerful that they could even kill immortal venerables. However, even I couldn't control them and ended up injured. Moreover, it's a mental injury. The bow of Cosmos and Sky, shaking arrow were definitely powerful and terrifying. They could even kill early immortal venerables. However, Murong-yu was injured after killing 9 immortal venerables in a row. Controlling the bow of Cosmos not only required strength, but also a strong mental state. Murong-yu relied on the Tree of Life and the endless immortal meridians to support the bow of Cosmos. However, controlling the bow of Cosmos also required a strong mental state. The reason why Murong-yu spat out blood was because his mental state was injured. At most, I can only kill 1 more immortal venerable. If I kill more, my mental state will suffer irreparable damage. It will cause great harm to myself and even affect my future cultivation. Murong-yu muttered in his heart. If Jiao Li and the rest hadn't retreated, Murong-yu would only kill 1 more person. He wouldn't be able to kill more people. Even if he could kill more people, it would be an act of self-destruction. Murong-yu had a sense of propriety. He wouldn't act like that until the very last moment. With a sway of his body, Murong-yu disappeared from where he was and reappeared in the Hichu Luoshu world. Then, he ignited his immortal meridians to accelerate time and began to heal. In less than an hour, Murong-yu appeared in the heavenly court's main hall again. At this moment, his injuries were all healed. Even his mental state was stronger than before. This was the benefit of accelerating time. The same injury would take 10,000 years to heal. Murong-yu could heal it in less than an hour, but the others would need 10,000 years. The difference of 10,000 years was extremely advantageous to him. Although I killed 9 immortal venerables and shocked many people, it's still not enough. However, this is only temporary. It was possible that the powerhouses of the Divine Union, or even Ji-Du, would come to kill them soon. I can only kill 9 immortal venerables, and they were only early immortal venerables. No matter how strong they are, I'm afraid I won't be able to kill them. By then, the heavenly court might be destroyed. Murong-yu's face darkened as he pondered. The situation was getting more and more grim. Ji must have subdued a lot of immortal venerables. After all, there weren't many immortal venerables in the immortals world. Of course, the immortal venerables. Of immortal, of course, Murong, immortal venerables. Murong-yu of heavenly immortals of the divine venerables world of immortal of. Moreover, he had exposed the Chinquin bow and the heaven-shaking arrow this time. Presumably, many people in the immortal world would be restless. Even Ji might come personally. It's of immortals of S. Strength was still a matter of strength. If Murong-yu was stronger, if there were more immortal venerables in the heavenly court, Murong-yu wouldn't be so helpless. With a thought, Murong-yu transmitted his voice to Heihu, Xiahou Jue, and the others. Sacred Master, Everyone bowed respectfully to Murong Yu after entering the hall. Even those immortal emperors had to be respectful to him. They knew that with Murong Yu's strength that could kill immortal sovereigns, he could easily kill them. What does everyone think about the future of the heavenly court? Murong Yu nodded and asked, Sacred Master, the people of the Divine Union are too strong. I'm not trying to boost their morale or diminish our prestige. Although the Union leader can easily kill immortal venerables, you're not invincible. Eventually, you'll run out of strength. In the entire heavenly court, the only one who can be considered a powerhouse is you, Sacred Master. Compared to the countless powerhouses of the Divine Union and the Immortal Realm Alliance, our heavenly court is nothing. We're simply no match for them. Everyone was silent at first. Then, Xiaozhua stepped forward and said. Everyone nodded. Xiaozhua was right. The heavenly court's current strength was simply no match for the Divine Union and the Immortal Realm Alliance. And now, those two forces definitely wouldn't let Murong Yu off the hook. Xiaozhua, what do you think we should do? Murong Yu looked at Xiaozhua and asked. Sacred Master, we're in an extremely dangerous situation now. We shouldn't go against the Divine Union or the Immortal Realm Alliance directly. My suggestion is that we leave the Feng province and avoid direct contact with those two forces. Xiaozhua, are you crazy? We have so many people in the heavenly court. How can we leave just like that? Are we giving up on those people? If we're leaving, we'll leave together. We won't give up on anyone. If we give up on even one person at this time, it will be extremely disadvantageous for us. Therefore, my suggestion is that the entire heavenly court leave this place. There are so many people, it's impossible for all of them to leave. Furthermore, the people of the Divine Union and the Immortal Realm Alliance will definitely not let us leave. Everyone else frowned slightly. Don't forget that the Sacred Master still has a spatial treasure. It's a powerful treasure that can carry living people. Xiaozhua suddenly said loudly. Everyone's eyes lit up as they looked at Murong Yu. No, although the Hichu Luoshu is an extremely powerful treasure, there are so many people in the heavenly court. The daily consumption is so terrifying. Can the Hichu Luoshu store all of us? Black Tiger suddenly thought of a very practical problem. Xiaozhua was stunned. He had never considered this problem. Therefore, he couldn't help but look at Murong Yu and say awkwardly, Sacred Master, how many people can your treasure store? If it can't store too many, then pretend I didn't say anything. While Xiaozhua and the others were talking, Murong Yu's mind was filled with a myriad of thoughts. Moving the entire heavenly court would definitely not be a problem. However, he couldn't possibly put all of Shenzhen's people in the Hichu Luoshu, right? That would be unrealistic. After all, although the Hichu Luoshu was like a real world, it wasn't a real world. After all, it wasn't a real world. The Hichu Luoshu was simply too safe. A place that was too safe wouldn't allow people to go out and train, explore, and take risks. It wouldn't be beneficial to the growth of the heavenly court. Furthermore, Murong Yu couldn't possibly move these people into the heavenly punishment order. That wasn't a problem either. Finally, Murong Yu thought of the Southern Mountains. He decided to move the heavenly court to the Southern Mountains. When the time came, Murong Yu would have to consider in detail whether to merge with the primal chaos Shenzhen and the Celestial Palace. Xiaozhua, your suggestion isn't bad. As for how many people can my treasure hold? At the very least, it won't be a problem to hold the entire heavenly court. Go, and prepare immediately. If anyone is willing, I'll take them with me. If not, there's no need to force them. Just let them leave. By the way, the same goes for those in Feng City who aren't disciples of the heavenly court. Yes. Xiaozhua and the others hurriedly retreated and went to prepare. Before long, Xiaozhua's voice resounded throughout Feng City. Everyone, the Divine Lord displayed his might just now and killed 9 immortal supremacies from the Divine Union. This was originally a good thing and worthy of a celebration. However, everyone knows what kind of thing the Divine Union is. Although the Divine Lord's strength is unparalleled and unparalleled, he's still just one person. As the saying goes, one fist is no match for 2 hands. We're just useless. Given the divine Lord's strength, no one in the immortal world can do anything to him. He could have left the heavenly court alone and completely ignored us. However, the divine Lord is kind-hearted and treats all of us like family. He's not willing to give up on any of us. Therefore, the divine Lord has decided to leave Feng City. At the same time, he'll take us with him. Now, I'm telling you, please get ready. If you're willing to follow the divine Lord and leave with us, the divine Lord will take us with him. If you're not willing to leave, please get ready and leave Feng City by yourself. Now, I'll give you half a day to pack your things. After that, gather at Feng City's plaza. Buzz. When Xiahou Zhuo's voice resounded throughout Feng City, the entire city instantly boiled over. The divine Lord wants to leave Feng City? Is he going to give up on Feng City? However, it doesn't matter. Since the divine Lord hasn't given up on us, I'll definitely follow him. I've decided to leave with the divine Lord. The divine Lord is kind-hearted and hasn't given up on us at this point. We won't give up on the divine Lord either. We've been disciples of the heavenly court all our lives, and we'll always be disciples of the heavenly court. As long as the divine Lord hasn't given up on us, we'll definitely follow him. What bullshit is the divine union and the immortal realm alliance? Once we're strong enough, we'll wipe them out and leave no one alive. We'll leave with the divine Lord for the time being. Once the heavenly court is strong enough, we'll destroy the divine union and the immortal realm alliance. Then, we'll unify the immortal realm. All kinds of discussions rang out in Feng City. Some were excited, some were sad, and some were at a loss. Half a day later, Feng City's plaza, countless people gathered in the plaza. Looking from afar, it was densely packed with people. However, the square of Feng City was too big. Even if all the people of Feng City gathered together, they could only occupy a corner of the square. With a flash, Murong Yu appeared on a high platform in front of the plaza. Looking at the crowd, Murong Yu went straight to the point and said, "I believe everyone is ready in half a day. Now, those who are willing to leave with me, stand on the right side of the plaza. Those who don't, stand on the left." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. As soon as Murong Yu's voice fell, the people in the plaza began to move. Xiahou Zhuo, He Hu, and even Murong Yu were shocked when they saw the people moving. Chapter 721. At his command, the people in the square surged and moved to the right side of the square. Before long, everyone had occupied the right side of the square. No one was standing on the left side of the square. In other words, everyone in Feng City, regardless of whether they were from the heavenly court or not, was willing to leave Feng City with Murong Yu. Regardless of whether they were sincere or not, they were still willing to leave with Murong Yu. Moreover, Murong Yu also believed that most of these people were sincere in leaving with him. I am very happy that everyone is willing to leave Feng City with me. Here, I, Murong Yu, the master of the heavenly court, promise everyone that this is the first and last time I'll be forced to leave. Soon, the strength of the heavenly court will grow. At that time, neither the immortal realm alliance nor the divine union will be our match. We will even destroy them one by one and unify the immortal realm. As for you, no matter what your cultivation is or what your talent is, I will make you the strongest in the immortal realm. Immortal monarchs and immortal emperors will not be a problem. Hua. Upon hearing Murong Yu's words, the crowd in the plaza immediately went into an uproar, each and every one of them excited. They did not doubt Murong Yu's words. If Murong Yu said that he could make all of them reach the immortal emperor realm, they would not doubt it either. This was because they all believed that Murong Yu could do it. Even He Hu and the others looked at Murong Yu in shock. They were inexplicably excited. Could it be that the sacred master has obtained a divine pill, like the monarch breakthrough pill? It can make a person reach the immortal emperor realm? If that's the case, if all the disciples of the heavenly court reach the immortal emperor realm, so what if the divine union and the immortal realm alliance are allied? We will wipe them out directly. They have a lot of immortal venerables, maybe thousands or tens of thousands. However, if our heavenly court's immortal emperors swarm them, Even if they have a few times more immortal venerables, they will not be able to withstand a single blow. Thinking of this scene, Black Tiger and the others trembled all over. This was because they were too excited. Moronyu gestured with his hands. Immediately, the noise in the square quickly dissipated. At the same time, Moronyu said, "Okay, I will immediately put you into my treasure space. When the suction force acts on you, I hope you will not resist. Otherwise, I won't be able to put you into the treasure space." As he spoke, Moronyu pointed his finger. Immediately, Hichu Luoshu turned into a ray of light and shot into the sky. Then, it quickly enlarged and covered the entire square. A terrifying suction force broke out. Suddenly, the people on the square were sucked into Hichu's book world. During this process, no one resisted. Therefore, in less than a few breaths of time, the square was already empty. They were all taken into the Hichu Luoshu world. "You guys go in as well." Moronyu glanced at Xiahou Zhua and the others. With a wave of his hand, he sent them into the Hichu Luoshu world. After putting everyone into the Hichu Luoshu, Moronyu waved his hand and put the Hichu Luoshu into his body. At the same time, his figure flashed and he soared into the sky, ready to leave Feng City. However, just as he was about to leave, his heart skipped a beat, and he immediately stopped flying. Although Feng City is not a big city, it has been run for a long time. It is the home of many people. Moreover, the Heavenly Court will not be incorporated into Shenzhen for the time being. When the time comes, I will have to rebuild my sect in Nanling. It will be better to take the whole Feng City. Moronyu thought for a while. Once again, he released the Hichu Luoshu and covered the whole Feng City. Hichu Luoshu devour. Moronyu roared and began to devour Feng City. Though he wasn't as strong as Ji, he had the He-Tu, the inscription of the Luo, and endless immortal veins. Moreover, Feng City was now just an empty city. There was no resistance at all. Under Moronyu's devouring, the whole Feng City began to slowly rise from the ground. This is the Hichu Luoshu world. There are mountains, rivers, and even the sky. It is exactly the same as the immortal world outside. Moreover, the heaven and earth spiritual chi here is much richer than outside. Yes, if the Sacred Lord did not say that he would take us into the Hichu Luoshu world, I would not believe that we are in a treasure space. This treasure is really too miraculous. Unfortunately, although we are in, we can't take Feng City away. After all, Feng City is our home. We have spent so much effort on it. It is a bit sad to just give it up like this. Why don't we go and ask the Sacred Lord to see if he can take Feng City in as well? Hey, what is that? Suddenly, someone pointed to the sky and exclaimed. Everyone hurriedly raised their heads to look, only to see a huge crack suddenly appear in the sky. At the same time, a huge shadow appeared in the sky and pressed down. "That is Feng City," someone exclaimed. "Ha! The Sacred Lord really moved Feng City in. Ha!" Everyone burst into laughter. One by one, they quickly flew away, leaving a large open space for Feng City to land. Rumble, after an earth-shattering sound, Feng City fell directly on the ground of the Hichu Luoshu world. The Sacred Lord is mighty. The Sacred Lord's divine power is unparalleled, invincible in the world. Everyone laughed and flew into Feng City. Moronyu did not appear in front of everyone. Instead, he went to find Hichu alone. "Young master, the Breakthrough Emperor pill has not been analyzed yet. It will still take some time." As if he knew what Moronyu wanted to ask, Hichu spoke first before Moronyu could speak. Moronyu nodded, and his figure flashed and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in the southern mountains, Shenzhen. However, Moronyu did not stay in Shenzhen. He stepped out and came to the deepest part of the southern mountains. "Senior, I have moved another force, the Heavenly Court, to the southern mountains. I hope Senior will not take offense." Although Moronyu had reached an agreement with the powerful existence in the southern mountains, he still had to greet that existence before moving the Heavenly Court. Otherwise, if that powerful existence was not willing, He could destroy the heavenly court with a single palm. Morongyu knew how terrifying the other party was. Morongyu waited for a long time, but there was still no response. Senior, I will take it as a yes. Morongyu smiled slightly, and his figure flashed and disappeared. Shangzhen, Celestial Palace, and the Heavenly Court are all my forces. Should I merge them all into one, Shangzhen? Morongyu pondered in his heart. Shangzhen and Celestial Palace were absolutely loyal to him. Everyone was like this because they all ascended from the lower realms. As for the Heavenly Court, although everyone followed him out of the Feng Prefecture, not everyone was absolutely loyal to him. I will not merge them for the time being. From now on, the Heavenly Court will no longer recruit people. From now on, the Primal Chaos Shangzhen, Celestial Palace, and the Heavenly Court will be the core of my forces. Even if I continue to recruit people in the future, they can only be peripheral forces. Morongyu muttered and came to the other side of the Nanling Mountains. Rumble, a big city appeared out of thin air and stood in the Nanling Mountains. Not long after, the people of the Heavenly Court also appeared in Feng City. This is the depths of the Nanling Mountains. I believe everyone knows what kind of place the Nanling Mountains is, so I will not say much. During this time, I hope everyone can cultivate in the city and do not leave if there is nothing important. At the same time, the Primal Chaos Shangzhen and Celestial Palace are also in the Nanling Mountains. They're one of my forces. If you see people from those two forces in the Nanling Mountains, I hope everyone can get along well. This is the Nanling Mountains. The Saint Lord can arrange for us to stay in the depths of the Nanling Mountains without attracting the existence in the depths of the Nanling Mountains to kill us. The Saint Lord is too powerful. When everyone heard that they were in the depths of the Nanling Mountains, they were shocked at first. Then, they all praised Morongyu and admired Morongyu even more. Did you hear that? In addition to our Heavenly Court, there is also the Shangzhen and Celestial Palace. These are the forces of the Saint Lord. When the three of us unite, our strength will be even more powerful. The Divine Union and the Immortal World Alliance will not be our opponents. Yes, I was a little lacking in confidence before, but now I am full of confidence. We will definitely be able to destroy the Divine Union and the Immortal World Alliance. After explaining the general situation to Xiahou Zhua, Black Tiger, and the others, Morongyu left the Heavenly Court and handed over the construction of the Heavenly Court to Black Tiger and the others. This was called the capable person doing more work. Now, the Emperor Breakthrough Pill had not been analyzed and mass-produced. Although they had moved into the Nanling Mountains, their forces would be exposed sooner or later. Once exposed, the Nanling Mountains would not be a safe place for them. Therefore, Morongyu wanted to increase his strength as much as possible before they were exposed. At the very least, he wanted to increase his strength to the Immortal Emperor realm, preferably the Immortal Supremacy realm. The best way to increase his strength was to become the enforcer of more cultivation worlds. After all, if Morongyu wanted to break through now, he could only comprehend the chaotic celestial records, which was very difficult to break through. However, Morongyu had a feeling that as long as he controlled another cultivation world, he would be able to break through and reach the intermediate Immortal Lord realm. At that time, his strength would break through the limit and reach 1 million Earth Dragon powers, or even more. Now, that the Heavenly Punisher Palace was one of the major forces of the Immortal World Alliance, those enforcers were probably in the Immortal World Alliance. Morongyu was now planning to sneak into the Immortal World Alliance and gain some benefits. Of course, if Morongyu wanted to increase his strength, he could also use star points to exchange. If he wanted to obtain a large number of star points, sneaking into the Immortal World Alliance was also a good idea. When the Immortal World Alliance and the Divine Union went to war, that would be the best way to earn star points. Moreover, if he accidentally killed Ji, the benefits Morongyu would definitely be terrifying. Chapter 722. Kaijian, one of the 10 great states of the Immortal World, was the headquarters of the Immortal World Alliance. Most of the experts in the Immortal World had gathered in Kaijian. There was no lack of immortal supremacy experts among them. When Murong Yu arrived at Kaijian, he discovered how prosperous and huge Kaijian City was. Originally, Kaijian City and Lingnan City were about the same. However, Kaijian City was thousands of times bigger than Lingnan City. It could even be said to be the biggest city in the immortal world. Of course, if the Divine Union in the north of the immortal world did not have a similar city, Kaijian City would definitely be the biggest city in the immortal world. Looking from afar, the entire huge Kaijian City was filled with black chi. This was because a large number of star-level villains were gathered in the city. Apart from the black chi, Murong Yu could feel the terrifying aura emanating from Kaijian City even before he got close to it. From afar, Kaijian City looked like a prehistoric ferocious beast that was about to devour people. This was because of the large number of experts' auras. Murong Yu entered Kaijian City without any obstruction. The Immortal World Alliance was currently recruiting experts from all over the immortal world. As long as they were immortals, they would not reject them, regardless of whether they were sky immortals or immortal supremacies. The Immortal World Alliance welcomed them. Therefore, there were no obstructions when entering Kaijian City. Of course, although sky immortals and immortal supremacies had joined the Immortal World Alliance, their status and identity were worlds apart. Low-level immortals, like sky immortals, would only be considered cannon fodder if they joined the Immortal World Alliance. If immortal supremacies joined the Immortal World Alliance, they would at least be able to become elders or protectors. They would be in a superior position. Given Murong Yu's strength as an early-stage immortal lord, after entering Kaijian City, Murong Yu discovered that immortal emperors were everywhere and immortal lords were as common as dogs. There were many immortal lords in the Immortal World Alliance. Although they were not considered cannon fodder, they were still ordinary disciples. Okay, I'll join the Heavenly Punisher Palace first. Murong Yu walked straight to the Heavenly Punisher Palace after entering Kaijian City. In the Immortal World Alliance, the Immortal Palace, Demon Sect, Sacred Sect, and the Heavenly Punisher Palace were the four major powers. Generally, people or powers that came to the Immortal World Alliance could only join these four powers. In other words, the Immortal Realm Alliance was now controlled by four major forces. As for the Alliance Master and the like, no one had been decided yet. It wasn't that they didn't want the position of Alliance Leader to be empty. In fact, it was because none of them were willing to submit to the other, so they couldn't produce an Alliance Leader. Although the Immortal Realm Alliance is powerful, it's still in a state of disunity. If I'm strong enough, I'll still be able to destroy the Immortal Realm Alliance. Murong Yu shook his head as he walked towards the Heavenly Punishing Palace and looked at the construction of the city. Brother, I see that you've just arrived at Kaijian City, right? Preparing to join the Immortal Realm Alliance? Our Azure Sky sect is now looking for a large number of people. With your strength, once you join our Azure Sky sect, you will definitely get a lot of resources. Murong Yu was walking on the road when he was suddenly pulled by a group of people. Then they actually wanted to pull him to join their so-called Blue Sky sect. Murong Yu couldn't help but laugh, but he only shook his head and said, "Sorry, I am a disciple of the Heavenly Retribution Palace. I've never heard of Blue Sky sect." Murong Yu directly refused. There were many forces like the Blue Sky sect in the Immortal Realm Alliance. However, how could they compare to the Heavenly Retribution Palace and the other four forces? Whether it was in terms of resources or other aspects, they were at a disadvantage. It could even be said that these large and small forces were just cannon fodder forces. After rejecting the various forces along the way, Murong Yu arrived in front of the Heavenly Retribution Palace. Stop! This is the Heavenly Retribution Palace. If you want to join the Heavenly Retribution Palace, go to the other side to register. Murong Yu had just arrived at the gate of the Heavenly Retribution Palace and had yet to enter when he was stopped by a few disciples of the Heavenly Retribution Palace. Looking at these arrogant disciples of the Heavenly Retribution Palace who were only at the Immortal King stage, Murong Yu's face couldn't help but turn gloomy. What? Don't tell me you're not convinced? Do you believe that I will arrest you as a spy of the Divine Union? A late-stage Immortal King youth who looked like a captain, sneered at Murong-yu. These guys, especially the disciples of the four great forces, thought that they were superior just because they were disciples of the four great forces. They simply looked down on others, just like these few good-for-nothings. If they had met Murong-yu, an immortal lord, in the past, how would they have dared to be so rude? They would have acted like a lackey. However, now they even looked down on the immortal lord. It was a classic case of a fox assuming the majesty of a tiger. Are your dog eyes blind? How dare you stop me? How dare you accuse me of being a spy from the Divine Union? Murong-yu shouted as he took a step forward and sent out a slap. Slap! 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 After a few crisp sounds, these few immortal king watchdogs were sent flying by Murong-yu's slap. Half of their faces were smashed and teeth mixed with blood spurted out. Finally, they fell heavily on the ground in the distance. Murder! A spy of the Divine Union has snuck in and killed people. These few immortal kings were stunned by Murong-yu's slap. After a long time, they stood up and howled like pigs being slaughtered. Whoosh! 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 Hearing these miserable cries, the surrounding people, including many people from the Heavenly Penalty Palace, rushed out. There were even immortal emperors who surrounded Murong-yu one by one. Are you the spy of the Divine Union? How dare you come to Kai-Jian City and kill people? You're really audacious. I'll take you down now. An immortal emperor walked out and rushed towards Murong-yu. Halfway through, he threw out a punch at Murong-yu. This guy didn't just want to take Murong-yu down. He wanted to kill Murong-yu directly. You're courting death. Murong-yu's eyes flashed with a cold light. He took a step forward and slapped the immortal emperor. With a crisp slap, the immortal emperor was slapped by Murong-yu. Like the few immortal kings, he was sent flying. You pieces of trash have blind dog eyes. How dare you treat me as a spy of the Divine Union? Murong-yu shouted coldly. With a flip of his hand, a token appeared in his palm. It was the token of a disciple of the Heavenly Penalty Palace. Of course, this token wasn't his. If he took out his original token, he would undoubtedly be courting death. The token in his hand belonged to Mo-Fo. In fact, Murong-yu was no longer himself. He had changed into Mo-Fo's appearance, a disciple of the Heavenly Penalty Palace and an immortal lord at that. Seeing the token in Murong-yu's hand, the people surrounding Murong-yu couldn't help but retreat. This was especially so for the people from the Heavenly Punisher Palace. Their faces were filled with shock. In the Immortal Realm Alliance, the people from the Heavenly Punisher Palace naturally had a sense of superiority. They felt that they were above everyone else. However, in the Heavenly Punisher Palace, the people with the highest status weren't them. Instead, it was the disciples of the Heavenly Punisher Palace. These people surrounding Murong-yu belonged to the Heavenly Punisher Palace. However, they weren't disciples of the Heavenly Punisher Palace. In front of the disciples of the Heavenly Punisher Palace, they were nothing. Therefore, when they saw the token in Murong-yu's hand, they retreated in fear. So it's senior brother. You pieces of trash are really blind. You can't even recognize your senior brother. At this moment, an intermediate immortal emperor walked out of the Heavenly Punisher Palace. He first bowed respectfully to Murong-yu. Then, he loudly berated the people surrounding Murong-yu. Senior brother, you just came from the sect, right? You want to join the Immortal Realm Alliance? I'll bring senior brother to register. The young immortal emperor said respectfully. Then, he brought Murong-yu into the Heavenly Punisher Palace. You pieces of trash, why haven't you dispersed yet? She had a respectful appearance toward Murong-yu. However, when it came to the others, she directly berated them without giving them any face. This guy was really too arrogant. Murong-yu's expression was indifferent as he followed the young immortal emperor to register his identity. During this process, Murong-yu didn't encounter any difficulties. On the contrary, there were many people who wanted to curry favor with him. However, Murong-yu couldn't be bothered to care about them. Senior brother, this is your manor. It belongs to you from now on. After settling all the formalities, the young immortal emperor brought Murong-yu to a manor. The manor wasn't big. However, It was about 1 li in radius. It was much better compared to the countless people crowded in one room. Of course, this was the treatment for the disciples of the Heavenly Punisher Palace. If one was an immortal king, even the disciples of the Heavenly Punisher Palace would only have a small room. Of course, if Murongyu's strength reached the immortal Emperor realm, it wouldn't be as simple as a manner. Senior brother, I'm Su Qingjie. If you need anything in the future, feel free to look for me. Before leaving, Su Qingjie reported his name in an attempt to curry favor with Murongyu. Murongyu nodded and casually tossed him a grade 7 immortal meridian. Then, he said indifferently, "This is your reward. I'll still need your help in the future." Su Qingjie was overjoyed. He hurriedly left in high spirits. This was a grade 7 immortal meridian. Even he hadn't seen one before, let alone possessed one. Now, I've finally sneaked into the Immortal World Alliance. Next, I'll have to raise my status in the Alliance. I'll have to find out about the other enforcers and even kill people from the Divine Union. Yes, I'll have to plan this well. I'll have to raise my strength as much as possible in the shortest time possible. If I want to raise my status, it's not enough to rely on the position of a disciple of the Heavenly Punisher Palace. Unless I can break through to the Immortal Emperor realm or the Immortal Venerate realm. However, if I can break through to that realm, I won't need to sneak in. I can only go and kill people from the Divine Union. I heard that the two alliances are at war recently. Immediately, Murongyu officially became a part of the Immortal World Alliance and began to carry out his plan. Chapter 723. Murongyu stood in the central square of Kaijian City. The square was huge, and there were countless immortals from the Immortal Realm Alliance with him. However, the strongest person in the square was only an immortal emperor. The vast square was packed with immortals of all kinds of strength. The strong ones were immortal emperors, and the weak ones were sky immortals. At a glance, there were at least a few trillion immortals in the square. In other words, there were a few trillion immortals. With so many people gathered in one place, even though they had all concealed their auras, the invisible aura that leaked out was still very terrifying. Even the surrounding void began to tremble. It has been 3 months since I infiltrated the Immortal Realm Alliance. Finally, there is an event. Murongyu, who was in the crowd, sized up the people around him and thought to himself. The event that Murongyu was talking about was not an internal event of the Immortal Realm Alliance. It was an event targeted at the Divine Union. Why was there such an event? Murongyu, who had infiltrated the Immortal Realm for 3 months, did not hear any news about the other enforcers. However, he had a clear understanding of the current situation in the Immortal Realm. The Immortal Realm had been divided into 2. The Immortal Realm Alliance occupied half of the Immortal Realm. In the north of the Immortal Realm, all the forces had joined the Divine Union. In other words, the Divine Union now controlled the north of the Immortal Realm. The Divine Union's appetite was definitely not limited to this. They were still expanding at a crazy pace. Ji Shishir's ambition was very strong. He wanted to unify the Immortal Realm. Murongyu found it hard to understand. Logically speaking, Ji Shishir was a god, an existence that surpassed the Immortal Realm. Furthermore, Murongyu guessed that Ji Shishir's level should not be low. In other words, he was a god and a very powerful one at that. Such an existence should not have cared about immortals like Murongyu or even the entire Immortal Realm. After all, the Immortal Realm was his stage. However, this guy seemed to have recovered from his injuries, but he did not leave the Immortal Realm and ascend. Did he want to unify the Immortal Realm? Could it be that he has the same plan as me? Murongyu had thought about this question more than once. He was now in control of several cultivation worlds, and there were countless cultivators in each of them. If he gathered these people together, his power would soar in a short time. In fact, Murongyu hadn't even gathered the people of Huaxia's self-cultivation world. However, if Murongyu wanted to unite, it would be a relatively easy matter. However, there was no need to gather those people for the time being. She might have the same idea. If he really controlled the Yanhuang Immortal Realm, how many human resources would he have? The Yanhuang Immortal Realm had 36 cultivation realms within it. How many cultivators and immortals were there? Just like the sand in the Ganges, countless. This way, as long as Ji Fei ascended to the God Realm, he would be able to bring all these people to the God Realm. With a little bit of nurturing, Ji's forces would immediately swell up and become very terrifying. No wonder the epic era isn't devouring cities now, but wants to unify the immortal world. Most likely, he already had this idea. However, it's impossible for him to unify the immortal world, because the immortal world is mine. While Muronyu was deep in thought, an immortal supremacy at the front of the square was done with his nonsense. Muronyu was completely uninterested in what this immortal supremacy had to say. After all, it was just a bunch of nonsense. Not long after, a huge gate was set up in the square. The so-called gate was actually the same as a teleportation gate. However, the gate could teleport more people each time, and it could be opened at any time. Of course, not everyone had the ability to open the gate. Even if they had the method to open it, they had to have great strength and resources. If not for the fact that the Immortal Realm Alliance and the Divine Union were about to go to war, the Immortal Realm Alliance would not have opened the gate. This was because the cost of opening the gate was too terrifying. Even a super faction would find it difficult to keep the gate open for a long time. On the other side of the gate was Dazhou. Dazhou was located in the center of the Immortal Realm and was the northernmost state of the Immortal Realm Alliance. The hundreds of Dazhou north of Dazhou had already been completely destroyed and had now become a battlefield for the Divine Union and the Immortal Realm Alliance. Now, Muronyu and the others are going to be teleported to the battlefield. These are all cannon fodder. Muronyu followed the crowd and flew toward the gate, sneering inwardly. In war, ordinary soldiers were cannon fodder, and in the two alliances, even immortal kings were just cannon fodder. Even Muronyu, an immortal high immortal, was nothing more than a high-level cannon fodder. Whoosh! As soon as Muronyu stepped into the realm gate, the world spun around him. Not long after, he found himself standing on the ground. The speed of the teleportation was extremely fast. In an instant, he had crossed countless states and arrived at Dazhou. As soon as he appeared in Dazhou, an austere aura engulfed him. A faint smell of blood filled the air. Dazhou was one of the strongholds of the Immortal Realm Alliance. Huge military camps occupied the land like prehistoric ferocious beasts that were about to devour humans. As a disciple of the Sky Punisher Palace, Muronyu had naturally been assigned to the Sky Punisher Palace camp. However, he had been assigned to a military camp called the Scout Camp. The Scout Camp was a military camp where all the scouts were gathered. It was made up entirely of scouts who were in charge of spying on the enemy and the like. This is a cannon fodder camp. The cannon fodder of cannon fodder. Muronyu felt a little helpless. However, he still headed to the Scout Camp to report. The mortality rate of the Scout Camp was extremely high, but it was also the fastest way to gain merits. Of course, this was on the premise that one could survive. Otherwise, everything would be meaningless. In the plaza of the Scout Camp, hundreds of billions of cannon fodder were gathered together and listening to the general of the Scout Camp on the platform above them. At first, Muronyu had been dismissive of this general. He hadn't intended to gain any merits by joining the military camp. His main purpose was to kill people and earn star points. As long as he had enough star points, he could increase his strength. Perhaps he could exchange them for supremacy pills. As long as Shenzhen and the others were strong enough, Muronyu wouldn't need to continue mingling in the Immortal Realm Alliance. However, when Muronyu glanced at the general, his body trembled. Origin Chi. Muronyu's eyes were filled with shock. This was because he felt the origin Chi from the general. Although the origin Chi was very obscure, Muronyu still felt it. Early stage immortal supremacy. I wonder which Immortal Realm's enforcer is he? Muronyu was pleasantly surprised. This trip was right. However, this guy is in the immortal supremacy realm. It's impossible to kill him silently with my strength. If I use the Cosmos Bow and Sky Shaking Arrow, even if I kill him, I might not be able to obtain his origin Chi. Moreover, my identity will be exposed. In this case, it's better not to kill him. However, this person must die. Moreover, he can only die in my hands. Morong glanced at the general again and memorized his name. Sun Haoshan, the commander of the scout camp. The general was in charge of the scout camp of the Immortal Realm Alliance. He was one of the higher-ups of the Heavenly Punishment Palace in the Immortal Realm Alliance. After Sun Haoshan spoke some nonsense, Murong Yu and a few other Immortal Kings and Immortal Realm experts formed a new team of 10. Everyone, we are teammates now. In the future, we will work together to earn merits and achievements. When Murong Yu and the others had just entered their camp, a late-stage Immortal Monarch expert spoke. On the surface, this person was the strongest among the 10 of them. Murong Yu only glanced at him indifferently. He wanted to see what this guy was going to do. As for the others, especially the 3 Immortal Kings, they looked at each other nervously. After all, the difference in strength between them was too great. In the future, they would have to act together. If the other party was unhappy with him or something, then they would sacrifice their lives for the country. Seeing everyone's reaction, Chun Junjiang nodded in satisfaction and continued, "We are a team. In the future, we will act together. However, since we are a team, naturally, we need a leader." At this point, Chun Junjiang glanced at everyone and continued, "I am the strongest here. Then, I will be the leader. Do you have any objections?" No objections, of course not. The 3 Immortal Kings quickly expressed their opinions. Chun Junjiang nodded in satisfaction and slowly looked at the others. Seeing this, the others also quickly nodded. Who asked him to be stronger? In the end, the 8 of them agreed to Chun Junjiang being their leader. Only Murong Yu did not express his opinion. "Murong Yu, what do you mean by this?" Chun Junjiang looked at Murong Yu with a gloomy expression. A faint cold light flashed past his brows. Although he was very careful and the others did not notice it, Murong Yu saw it. "I have no objections to you being the leader. However, although we are a team, I hope that you will not restrict me. Moreover, I may not act together with you," Murong Yu said indifferently. "Murong Yu, since we are a team, we should have team spirit. How can you act alone? Moreover, even if you act alone, I am afraid that you will die when you go out. Only when the 10 of us act together can we ensure our safety and earn military merits." An early-stage Immortal Monarch expert looked at Murong Yu and said indifferently. Chun Junjiang narrowed his eyes slightly. Looking at Murong Yu, a trace of killing intent flashed past. Good. Since you are willing to act freely, I will not restrict you." Chun Junjiang suddenly laughed. He actually agreed with Murong Yu's words. However, his heart was filled with killing intent. "This bastard. Once you leave Dazhou, I will kill you. At that time, new members will come in. You cannon fodder are just stepping stones for me to climb up." Chapter 724. Whoosh! Murong Yu turned into a ray of light and rushed out of the Dazhou province, flying toward the north. The northern part of Dazhou was the battlefield between the 2 large alliances. It was roughly the size of 100 large states. Ever since the 2 large alliances had been established, this place had become a battlefield for both sides. Murong Yu had already been in Dazhou for half a month. During this time, he hadn't had any missions. However, he had also familiarized himself with the situation on this side. On the battlefield, besides the usual battles between the 2 armies, there were usually countless people lingering there. Their goal was to kill their enemies and obtain military merits. As long as they had military merits, they could rely on their own military merits to rise steadily in the Alliance army. The higher their status, the more benefits and resources they would receive. For example, ordinary soldiers like Murong Yu only had some basic resources in the army. These resources weren't even enough for cultivation. However, if their status was higher, they would receive more resources. Furthermore, military merits didn't just raise a person's status. There are also corresponding rewards. Royal weapons, monarch weapons, and even imperial weapons were possible. There were also other treasures like immortal meridians. This was the case for both the Immortal Realm Alliance and the Divine Union. Of course, Murong-Yu's goal in entering the battlefield wasn't to obtain these resources. His main goal was to obtain military merits and kill enemies to earn star points. Star points could allow Murong-Yu to raise his cultivation base or exchange them for other treasures. Military merits could also allow Murong-Yu to raise his status in the Immortal Realm Alliance. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Not long after Murong-Yu left Dazhou, the 9 streaks of light flew over quickly and chased after Murong-Yu. In fact, there were countless people who had left Dazhou just like them. The military camp didn't care about them. After all, they were all immortals. They weren't real soldiers. They weren't soldiers of the mortal world. Captain, why are we following Murong-Yu? Jiang Yiqing asked Chun Junjiang in confusion. Chun Junjiang's eyes flashed sternly as he grinned. Do you want to obtain military merits? To raise your status so that you can obtain more resources and glory? Yes, that's why we joined the Immortal Realm Alliance. The other 9 nodded. If it wasn't for this, why would they join the Immortal Realm Alliance? If we want to obtain military merits, our entire team must move together. As the saying goes, the more people there are, the more strength there is. This is the only way to obtain military merits in the shortest time. Murong-Yu is a member of our team, but he doesn't move with us. He will drag us down like this, so I won't let this happen. Chun Junjiang said with a murderous look, and at the same time, he made a throat-slitting gesture. The rest of the people were shocked, but their hearts turned cold. Murong-Yu is only in the elementary stage of the Monarch Immortal Realm. As long as we kill him, there will be others to replace our team. Think about it. The 3 of you are all in the late stage of the Immortal King realm. As long as we earn enough military merits, you can exchange them for treasures that can improve your cultivation. Increasing one's cultivation was what everyone pursued. In the army, as long as they had enough military merits, they might be able to increase their cultivation. So, do any of you have any objections? Chun Junjiang asked coldly as he looked at the crowd. When they met Chun Junjiang's cold gaze, their hearts turned cold. They all shook their heads and said, I have no objections. These trash. Up ahead, Murong-Yu is no longer flying in the sky. They were already close to the depths of the battlefield. If they continued to fly in the sky, they might be used as a rake. Not only would the people from the Divine Union attack him, but the people from the Immortal Realm Alliance would also attack him. After all, killing the enemy could earn military merits, and killing one's own people could also earn military merits, as well as various treasures and resources. Now, it was time to talk about military merits. The uniforms of the Divine Union and the Immortal Realm Alliance were different. It was easy to tell which alliance they belonged to based on their uniforms. Furthermore, each of them had an identity token. After killing the other party, military merits could be calculated based on the identity token of the other party. At this point, some people might have doubts. Could one exchange military merits with an identity token? Wouldn't that mean that one could forge an identity token? That was impossible. The identity tokens of both sides were specially made, so it was impossible to forge them. Moreover, there was spiritual aura in the identity token. Even if the identity token could be forged, the spiritual aura couldn't. Therefore, this would put an end to the possibility of forging an identity token. However, on the battlefield, it wasn't just the enemy that was important. One's own people were also important. After all, people on the battlefield would more or less have some of the enemy's identity tokens, as well as their own treasures and resources. After killing these people, one could obtain military merits and resources. Therefore, on the battlefield, the most dangerous person wasn't the enemy, but one's own people. This was because one could tell at a glance that the enemy was an enemy. They would either attack directly or retreat. On the other hand, one's own people would be unwittingly set up. Whoosh! Murong-Yu stopped on a mountain peak. Captain, Murong-Yu seems to have discovered us. Jiang Yiqing couldn't help but tell Chun Junjiang nervously when he saw Murong-Yu stop suddenly. It's best that he stops. Chun Junjiang grinned maliciously before his figure flickered, and he flew towards Murong-Yu. He landed directly in front of Murong-Yu. Murong-Yu looked at Chun Junjiang and the others with a gloomy face and said in a deep voice, "What are you doing? Why are you following me? I'm just trying to kill you. However, I'll give you a choice. Kneel down immediately and submit to me. Become my slave, and I'll spare your life." Chen Junjiang looked at Murong Yu and said disdainfully. In his eyes, Murong Yu was only an early-stage, immortal high immortal. The gap between him and Murong Yu was too big. He could kill Murong Yu with a single finger. Kill me? With just trash like you? Murong Yu couldn't help but laugh. He really found it funny. These people were only high immortals, but they said that they wanted to kill him. Didn't they know that he could easily kill immortal emperors before he made breakthrough? Murong Yu, kill yourself. A mid-stage immortal walked over and looked at Murong Yu indifferently. Murong Yu, don't blame us. Who asked you to be a member of our team? Yet, you don't know what's good for you and want to act alone? The immortal king also walked away and said coldly to Murong Yu, "Do you really want to kill me? I'll give you a chance to choose now. If you follow me, I'll guarantee you a bright future. But if you follow Chen Junjiang, you'll be asking a tiger for its skin. You'll die a horrible death. Don't you see Chen Junjiang's wild ambition? They're only using you as tools. Once you're useless, you can only die." Murong Yu placed his hands behind his back and said calmly. Killing intent flashed in Chen Junjiang's heart as he shouted angrily, "Murong Yu, you don't have to drive a wedge between us. It's useless. After killing you, there will be more people in the camp to replace you. At that time, we'll definitely stand out. You pieces of trash still want to stand out?" Murong Yu couldn't help but laugh. Then, his face turned cold as he said in a deep voice, "Do you really want to follow Chen Junjiang to kill me? It doesn't matter if you're not strong enough. The most important thing is your foresight. Once you make the wrong choice, you'll be consigned to eternal damnation. Don't say any more. We've already decided on Captain Chen Junjiang." An immortal king said in a deep voice. He had already started to flatter. "Since that's the case, all of you can go to hell." Murong Yu said indifferently, "All of you, come at me. I'd like to see what ability you have to kill me." "How dare you?" An immortal monarch realm expert shouted angrily. He took a step forward and punched towards Murong Yu. "Your strength should be about 2,000 Earth Dragons' power, right? Although it's not very strong, it's still barely enough. If you follow me, I can make you even stronger. However, since you dare to attack me, there's only one consequence for you." Murong Yu sneered and pointed out. Bang! Before anyone could react, the middle stage immortal monarch realm expert had already exploded into a cloud of blood mist and dissipated into the air. Seeing this scene, the remaining 8 people were greatly frightened, and with a swish sound, they retreated out of the area. Each and every one of them looked at Murong Yu in shock, as if they had just seen a ghost. Jiang Yiqing looked at Murong Yu and said incoherently, You killed him?" His face turned red and white as he looked at Murong Yu. Murong Yu didn't even look at Jiang Yiqing. He only looked at the shocked Chen Junjiang and said indifferently, "Kill yourself. Maybe I'll leave you with an intact corpse." Chen Junjiang was shocked beyond words. He was a late-stage immortal monarch realm expert. He could also kill the middle-stage immortal monarch realm expert. However, he couldn't do it as cleanly as Murong Yu. In other words, Murong Yu was stronger than him. That's impossible. Chen Junjiang roared in his heart. He didn't believe that Murong Yu was stronger than him. Let's attack together and kill him. Although he didn't admit that Murong Yu was stronger than him, Chen Junjiang knew that he was no match for them. With a loud roar, he took the lead and sent a palm strike at Murong Yu. "You really don't know what death is. I told you to kill yourself, but you still want me to do it. Sigh." Murong Yu shook his head and pointed out again. With a bang, Chen Junjiang exploded into a cloud of blood mist. He couldn't be more dead. Plop, plop. Seeing how fierce Murong Yu was, the remaining people's faces changed again. They no longer had any thoughts of resistance. As for the 3 immortal kings, they directly knelt down. "I'm willing to submit. I'm willing to be your slave. Please don't kill us. Chen Junjiang forced us to do this." The 3 immortal kings begged loudly with tears streaming down their faces. I've already given you a chance. Murong Yu shook his head and disappeared in a flash. But right after he left, bang, 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 the few immortal kings exploded and were all killed. Chapter 725. After killing the 9 members of his original team, Murong Yu went deep into the battlefield. During this process, Murong Yu encountered many people from his own side. Many people from the Immortal Realm Alliance were also killed by him. Of course, Murong Yu would not directly kill the people from the Immortal Realm Alliance. These people were all soldiers fighting against the Divine Union. Well, they could also be considered cannon fodder. Although they were useless, the victory of the war depended on the accumulation of cannon fodder. The people from the Immortal Realm Alliance killed by Murong Yu were the first opponents of Murong Yu. In fact, there were many people who had designs on Murong Yu as he flew through the battlefield alone. However, given Murong Yu's strength, these people were just sending themselves to their deaths. They sent a lot of resources and star points to Murong Yu. Given Murong Yu's current strength, he would be the #1 expert if he appeared on the battlefield. Coupled with his speed, no one would be able to stop him. An immortal venerate powerhouse could kill Murong Yu. However, how could there be an immortal lord powerhouse on the battlefield? Powerhouses of this level were generally the upper echelons of the army, overseeing the rear. They would not appear on the front lines unless it was a decisive battle. There's a group of people ahead. There seems to be a lot of them. Murong Yu's flying body suddenly spread its wings like a giant bird as he flew to the top of a mountain in front of him. Then, he hid and looked ahead. The environment of the battlefield was very special. The suppression of spiritual consciousness was very strong. One had to know that this place had been a large province of the immortal realm before, so there was no suppression of spiritual consciousness. However, the suppression of spiritual consciousness was similar to when he had first entered the divine tomb. It could not even see as far as one's eyes. In this regard, Murong Yu had heard that countless powerhouses from the Divine Union and the Immortal Realm Alliance had gathered and worked together to change the laws of heaven and earth, creating an environment that was suitable for fighting with large armies. Otherwise, with a sweep of spiritual consciousness, one would be able to see clearly where the other party was lying in ambush and where there were people. This would lose the feel of a battlefield. Perhaps the origin of the world of immortals is also involved. Otherwise, no matter how powerful they were, it would be difficult for them to change the laws of the heavens and earth. They're here. An army of 100,000? Murong Yu's eyes suddenly lit up. I didn't expect to encounter such a group of soldiers as soon as I came out. Murong Yu's face lit up with joy, and with a flicker of his body, he suddenly spread his wings like an eagle and charged towards the 100,000-strong squad. He could already tell that the strongest among the army was only a late immortal emperor. They posed no threat to him. Whoosh! Murong Yu descended from the sky and stood in front of the army. Seeing Murong Yu appear, the 100,000-man team became alert, their blades unsheathed as they observed their surroundings, ready to engage in battle at any moment. However, after observing for a long time, there was no movement in the surroundings. It seemed that only Murong Yu was there. Don't look, there's no one around. Seeing these people's reactions, Murong Yu couldn't help but remind them. You're alone? Are you seeking death by standing in front of us? In the army, one of the soldiers looked at Murong Yu and laughed loudly. You're thinking too much. I'm here to kill all of you. Kill yourselves. I'll leave your corpses intact, Murong Yu said indifferently. There is no way Murong Yu would let these people go. Even if they handed over their identity tokens, Murong Yu still wouldn't let them off. This was because he could still obtain star points after killing these people. To him, star points were much more important than military merits. Ha ha ha. Hearing Murong Yu's words, the 100,000-man team burst into laughter. They felt that Murong Yu was too funny. You're just an ant in the early stage of the immortal monarch realm. How dare you say that you're going to kill us? You even want us to kill ourselves? Don't you know that any one of us here can kill you? An immortal emperor held back his laughter and said disdainfully to Murong Yu. Indeed, The weakest among the 100,000-man team was an intermediate immortal duke. The strongest among the 100,000-man team was a late-stage immortal emperor. Moreover, their opponent was a titled immortal emperor. Moreover, there were a few titled immortal emperors among the 100,000-man team. This army had most likely been assembled because of the Divine Union's actions. Given the overall strength of this army, even if they couldn't sweep the entire battlefield, they were definitely an invincible existence in small-scale battles. They were perfect for sneak attacks and hunting. All right, that's enough. Lin Fei, go and kill him. Don't interfere with our mission, one of the titled immortal emperors said indifferently. Yes, the one called Lin Fei stood up and walked towards Murong Yu with murderous intent. Lin Fei was an intermediate immortal duke. Brat, although you're alone, you can still give me an identity token. Die. Lin Fei grinned maliciously as he threw a punch at Murong Yu's head, intending to kill him in one blow. Murong Yu sighed helplessly as he shook his head. Why is it that no one believes me when I speak the truth? He felt frustrated. With his strength, killing these people would be as easy as flipping his hand. However, why did these people not believe him? In fact, Murong Yu is only an early-stage immortal duke. If he said he had 700,000 Earth Dragons' power, no one would believe him. Since that's the case, then all of you can die. Murong Yu indifferently said as he looked at Lin Fei, who was charging towards him. Bang! With a single glance from Murong Yu, Lin Fei immediately exploded into a bloody mist and dissipated into the air. Even when he died, he didn't know how he was killed. Seeing this scene, the faces of the people who were looking at Murong Yu with disdain instantly changed. There's something strange about this brat. I'll take him down. One of the titled celestial emperors said with a cold glint in his eyes as he stepped forward and extended his hand to grab Murong Yu. 200,000 Earth Dragons' power? A titled celestial emperor is indeed powerful. However, he's still too weak, Murong Yu said as he shook his head and threw a punch at the titled celestial emperor. Boom! A deafening explosion rang in the air as Murong Yu killed the titled celestial emperor with just a punch. On the other hand, Murong Yu remained motionless. Even his clothes did not flutter. After all, he had 500,000 more Earth Dragons' power than the titled celestial emperor. With his strength, he could easily crush the titled celestial emperor. Shocking. Shocking. Upon seeing this, the titled celestial emperors were stunned. All of them stood rooted to the ground in a daze. He might be a celestial venerable who's pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Let's kill him together. Indeed, no matter how strong he is, he's only one person while we have 100,000 people. Even if he's a celestial venerable, he won't be able to stop us. The people from the Divine Alliance snapped out of their daze and prepared to kill Murong Yu. However, at this moment, Murong Yu sneered and said, "It's too late. Spatial storm, spatial shackle, spatial slash, and spatial laceration." Murong Yu shouted. The 100,000 people felt as though they had fallen into a swamp. Their movements became sluggish and sluggish. At the same time, the space around them began to distort and tear apart as spatial storms appeared. At the same time, sharp sabers and swords formed from spatial energy appeared one after another and ruthlessly attacked the 100,000 people. In just a blink of an eye, more than 10,000 people were killed. Their deaths were inevitable. However, this was only the beginning. Although Murong Yu could not imprison them for a long time, it was enough for him to kill a lot of them, even if he could only imprison them for a short moment. Every time a spatial storm erupted, thousands of people would be killed. Moreover, the spatial storms did not disappear immediately. Instead, they grew larger and larger like tornadoes. Spatial slash. Murong Yu roared as a war blade formed from spatial energy slashed down. Pooh! Thousands of people were instantly sliced into two. 1,000 armies elephant drawing fist. Murong Yu took a step forward and disappeared from his spot. In just a blink of an eye, he appeared in front of a titled celestial emperor. He threw a punch at the titled Celestial Emperor. Bang! The titled Celestial Emperor, with more than 200,000 Earth Dragons' energy, did not even have time to react before he was killed by Murong-Yu's punch. The space shook. As Murong-Yu shouted inwardly, the space in the crowd began to shake violently. Every time the space shook, the surrounding void would be destroyed. If the Celestials from the Divine Alliance did not escape in time, they would be reduced to a bloody mist. Sword River Snowstorm. The Celestial Eradication sword suddenly appeared in Murong-Yu's hand before he slashed it down. In just a blink of an eye, hundreds of millions of divine swords appeared out of thin air and wreaked havoc in the area like a divine dragon swinging its tail. Wherever the divine swords passed, the void would shatter. Nobody could stop them. At this point, 70,000 to 80,000 people had been killed. Only a few breaths had passed since Murong-Yu made his move. Omnidirectional slaughter. Murong-Yu suddenly let out a roar and unleashed his ultimate move. Rumble. With Murong-Yu's body as the epicenter, a terrifying energy swept out in all directions. Pooh! 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 Large swaths of experts were killed again. In the end, only a few dozen of the strongest celestial emperors remained standing. The others were all killed by the shockwave. At this moment, Murong-Yu was not even under attack. Devil! You're a devil! A late-stage celestial emperor shouted in horror as he looked at Murong-Yu. Devil! Murong-Yu couldn't help but laugh. He then took a step forward and attacked again. As soon as the voice fell, no one else other than Murong-Yu cursed. You devil! I curse you to die without a complete corpse. Chapter 726. 1. 5 billion star points. Not bad. Murong-Yu was hiding in a mountain range on the battlefield. After counting his gains, he nodded with a smile. Murong-Yu had been on the battlefield for half a month, and his star points had reached 5 billion. Originally, he had 1 billion star points. In other words, he had gained 500 million star points in this half a month. The speed of earning star points was extremely fast, although it was not as fast as directly devouring a city. However, the gains on the battlefield were not only star points, but also a large amount of resources and military merits. Murong-Yu did a rough calculation and discovered that the number of identity tokens he'd obtained had already exceeded 5 billion. 5 billion identity tokens seemed like a huge number. However, to this battlefield, to the Immortal Realm Alliance, 5 billion identity tokens could barely raise Murong-Yu's position. It would probably be something like a captain. A mere captain was useless to Murong-Yu. If he wanted to enter the upper echelons of the Immortal Realm Alliance, he would have to at least become a general in the army. Otherwise, those below the rank of general would only be low-level existences. At this rate, I will be able to earn more than 100 billion star points in a few years' time. At that time, even if I can't break through the chaotic heavenly record, I can still use the star points to increase my cultivation. In addition to a large number of star points and identity tokens, there are also a large number of resources. If not for the existence of the Heavenly Punishment Token, just these resources alone would be enough to make me crazy. Even those super sects can't compare to these resources. Murong-Yu had obtained a token worth 5 billion, but the resources he'd obtained weren't limited to 5 billion. This was because he had only kept the enemy's identity tokens. As for the Immortal Realm Alliance's identity tokens, he had not kept them. In other words, the identity tokens Murong-Yu had obtained were at least 3 times more than the identity tokens he had obtained, or even more. His gains in this half a month were almost comparable to that of an ordinary super sect. Of course, this was only in terms of quantity. In terms of quality, it was incomparable. After all, the resources of those people that Murong-Yu had killed were only ordinary things. There was nothing too extraordinary. Even so, his gains were still very shocking. Murong-Yu also understood why so many forces joined the Immortal World Alliance and the army. Because the benefits obtained from the battlefield were simply too terrifying. Over the past few months, the number of Divine Union troops has been increasing. The number of people in each team is also increasing. Murong-Yu frowned. In the beginning, he often encountered teams of a few, dozens, or even hundreds of people. When he encountered the 100,000-strong team, he already felt that there were too many of them. However, at this point in time, a team of 100,000 was already considered the smallest. Murong had even encountered a team of several 100 million people. The other party seems to be searching for something on the battlefield. Could it be that they are looking for me? Murong pondered. In fact, Murong's guess was not wrong. What he didn't know was that he had already been called a devil, because in this half a month, too many people had died at his hands. More than 1 billion people had died. Moreover, no matter how many people there were in Murong's team, none of them managed to escape. On the battlefield, hundreds of billions of people were killed at every turn. It was not uncommon for there to be trillions of people in each battle. However, that was only the majority of the battles. Without a celestial venerate, how could a person kill 1 billion powerhouses? It was impossible. This was especially true when Murong was only a celestial duke. Naturally, the people in the Divine Union were unaware of Murong's identity. They only knew that he was Murong. In fact, Murong had always been using Fo's identity on the battlefield. In fact, the reason the 10-man team knew Murong's name was because Murong was too lazy to use Fo's identity. After all, it was useless for those insignificant people to know his name. Do you know? Recently, a devil has appeared on the battlefield. I heard that the person from the Immortal World Alliance is only an early-stage Celestial Duke. However, he single-handedly killed more than 10 billion powerhouses. He even killed many titled Celestial Emperors. An early-stage Celestial Duke killed a titled Celestial Emperor? Are you kidding me? Kidding my ass. Haven't you noticed that many of the Divine Union's troops have gathered together? Moreover, more and more people are gathering together. Not many troops dare to act alone. It's all because of that devil called Fo. Those people are too useless. It's ridiculous. He's only an early-stage Celestial Duke, but he managed to kill titled Celestial Emperors. The Immortal World Alliance must be exaggerating to lower the morale of the Divine Union. Don't doubt it. I heard that Celestial Venerates from the Divine Union have entered the battlefield. You should know that Celestial Venerates aren't allowed to enter the battlefield. Really? Why would I lie to you? An old man from my sect, who's a Celestial Venerate, has already snuck into the battlefield to kill Fo. I heard that the Divine Union has placed a bounty on Fo. If I can kill that Fo, I will be rich. What bounty? If you can kill Fo, you'll be promoted to a captain. On top of that, you'll have an Imperial weapon and countless Celestial Meridians. TSK, you'll be promoted to a captain if you kill Fo. That's a captain we're talking about. One rank higher than that would be a general. You're only one step away from entering the upper echelons of the Divine Union. I can't believe the Divine Union is offering such a high bounty. It seems like Fo has really shaken the upper echelons. That's why you know what I mean. Just as Murong was taking inventory of his loot, he heard a nearby team talking about him. You'll be promoted to a captain if you kill me? It's making me want to kill myself. Murong inwardly chuckled. The Divine Union was really generous. A captain was considered a high-ranking official in the Divine Union. Even if they didn't have to do anything, they would still receive a lot of resources. I'm afraid things aren't that simple. It's impossible for them to be promoted just because I killed 1 billion people. Don't tell me they already know my identity? Murong suddenly thought of this possibility. That's right. That's why the Divine Union is so high-profile. However, you want to kill me? Let's see if you'll kill me, or I'll kill you. A Celestial Venerate is worth at least 100 million stars. Murong's eyes flashed fiercely. If that's the case, I'll add more firewood to make the fire burn brighter. The more Celestial Venerates there are, the better. Murong made up his mind. Then, he disappeared from where he was standing in a flash. The troop of 5 was shocked by Murong's sudden appearance. They instinctively retreated as one of them looked at Murong warily. However, when they saw that the person standing in front of them was merely an early-stage Celestial Duke, they were infuriated. After all, They were all late-stage celestial emperors. Moreover, 2 of them were titled celestial emperors. As for the remaining 3, they were not weak either. Upon seeing their reaction, Murong scoffed disdainfully. You think you can kill me with just the 5 of you? After all, they were a troop of 5 late-stage celestial emperors. Even if Murong didn't want to despise them, he had no choice but to look down on them. You're a mofo? One of the enraged, titled celestial emperors was overjoyed when he saw mofo. Mofo, are you that mofo? The others also laughed. At the same time, powerful divine consciousness surged out of their bodies and locked onto Murong. Then, they spread out and surrounded Murong. If we kill him, we'll be promoted to captain. At that time, our troop strength will increase tremendously. Ha! One of the titled celestial emperors laughed as he looked at Murong. It was as though he could already see himself being promoted to captain. Murong shook his head. He could not be bothered to waste his breath on these people. He took a step forward and threw a punch at the titled celestial emperors. The titled celestial emperor shouted as he stretched his hand out to grab Murong. Take him down. Murong shook his head. His divine fist was invincible as he charged forward bravely. Bang! A loud explosion rang in the air as Murong's punch landed on the titled celestial emperor's body. The titled celestial emperor was instantly reduced to a cloud of blood mist. The others were shocked when they saw this. However, before they could react, Murong had already made his move. Boom! Boom! Murong struck out 4 times consecutively. With each strike, he killed the titled celestial emperors. These late-stage celestial emperors could not even withstand a single strike from Murong. He was indeed invincible among those below celestial venerables. After collecting their identity tokens and resources, Murong soared into the sky and left the area. There's no need to keep a low profile anymore. I should be as high profile as possible. It's best if I can lure those celestial venerables out. Murong thought to himself as he activated the weapon formula and transformed into a streak of light as he charged forward. It did not take long before he encountered a group of 100 million people. Without hesitation, Murong launched an attack. He unleashed all sorts of ultimate moves and killed the group of 100 million people in less than an hour. Half a day later, Murong encountered another group of 100 million people. Similarly, he unleashed his most ferocious attacks. Heaven and earth crumbled, the sun and moon dimmed, and blood flowed like a river. Many powerhouses died. Apart from a few hundred powerful and fast cultivators who managed to escape, the rest of the hundreds of millions of people turned into Murong stars. Half a month later, Murong star points had reached an astonishing 5 billion. In other words, he had obtained 4 billion stars in half a month. Chapter 7:27. Yes, the team in front has 10 billion people. If I can kill all of them, I will obtain at least 1 billion star points and 10 billion identity tokens. Murong was hiding in a swamp as he watched the Divine Union team slowly approach. This team of 10 billion people was the largest one Murong had ever encountered in the Divine Union. If he could devour all of them, he would definitely gain a lot. 10 billion people. Even if they are gathered together, they will still be scattered within a radius of 10 million miles. Although they aren't very concentrated, they aren't scattered either. However, it will be somewhat difficult to devour all of them. Given Murong's current strength, the Zai technique could already allow him to confine everything within a radius of 10 million miles. However, he didn't just confine the void within a radius of 10 million miles. He also confined the 10 billion immortals. If the power of those immortals was concentrated, it would really be earth-shattering. They could easily tear the void apart and shatter Murong's spatial shackles. They would probably be able to shatter Murong's attack in an instant. However, Murong wouldn't be able to destroy 10 billion immortals in an instant. Even a true immortal venerate. In fact, an ordinary early-stage immortal venerate could only sneak away when they saw this team of 10 billion people. although there weren't any immortal venerate powerhouses among the 10 billion people. The combined power of 10 billion immortals could easily tear apart an immortal venerate powerhouse. Damn it, where the hell is this place? The members of the Divine Union team found it difficult to walk through the swamp. Thus, they couldn't help but curse out loud. The swamps of the immortal world had a huge restrictive effect on immortals. If they didn't fly directly over the swamp, even though they were immortals, it would be difficult for them to walk through the swamp like ordinary people in the mortal world. However, for some reason, this team of 10 billion people could only walk through the swamp and not fly in the sky. Besides making it difficult for them to walk, the dense fog emitted by the swamp also greatly hindered their vision. B****. If I find a mofo, I will definitely beat him to death. Because of him, we are forced to walk in this disgusting swamp. It turned out that the number of people from the Divine Union that had appeared on the battlefield had been increasing. This was all because of Murongyu. There were too few of them. Once they encountered Murongyu, they would all be killed, not to mention killing Murongyu. If there were too many people, they were afraid that Murongyu would flee at the mere sight of them. Therefore, the number of Divine Union troops had ranged from a few 100 million to 10 billion people recently. Moreover, these people gathered together and continuously swept through the battlefield. Their goal was to lure Murongyu out. With the strength of these teams, even if there were no immortal venerables, they could easily kill Murongyu. Moreover, whenever they encountered people from the Immortal Realm Alliance on the battlefield, they would crush them like the autumn wind sweeping away fallen leaves. After all, the Immortal Realm Alliance didn't take the same action as the Divine Union, gathering hundreds of millions or even tens of billions of people, unless they were preparing for a big battle. Otherwise, they would usually move in small teams. However, over the past month, many people from the Immortal Realm Alliance have been forced to return to Dajo. On the battlefield, the Divine Union's troops were getting bigger and bigger. Whenever they encountered these troops, the small teams from the Immortal Realm Alliance would only end up being crushed. Not only were they unable to kill the Divine Union's people, but they were also constantly being hunted down. After a long time, who in the Immortal Realm Alliance would still dare to stay on the battlefield? Of course, Murongyu was an exception. When did the fog in this swamp turn pink? This is really strange. It was unknown when it started, but the originally white fog had turned completely pink at this time. Looking from afar, the entire swamp was pink in color, giving off a charming and gentle feeling. Be careful. This pink fog is really strange. Everyone, hold your breaths. An immortal emperor powerhouse shouted. Hurry up and leave this damn swamp. Everyone held their breaths and walked quickly into the distance, wanting to leave this damn swamp. However, this swamp was huge and they didn't fly directly. Instead, they walked step by step on the swamp. No matter how fast they were, there was a limit to their speed. During this process, these immortals who were holding their breaths didn't realize that even though they were holding their breaths, the pink fog was still seeping into their pores and entering their bodies. Lishimbo, what's wrong with you? Why is your whole body so red? One of the immortals in the group asked in shock when he realized that his companion's body was actually red, as if blood was seeping out. At the same time, he also realized that Lishimbo's breathing was rapid and his eyes were filled with lust. Naked lust? Look, roar. Lishimbo didn't answer the immortal's question. Instead, he let out an angry roar. With a flash of his body, he pounced on a female immortal not far away from him and pushed her to the ground. Rip! Lishimbo's power shook, and instantly, the female immortal's clothes were completely torn apart. At the same time, Lishimbo had already pinned the stunned female immortal to the ground and was about to mount her. Lishimbo, you bastard, are you crazy? Seeing Lishimbo's appearance, the surrounding people were suddenly shocked. An immortal roared and rushed forward. With a punch, he sent Lishimbo flying. He spat out blood and fell into the swamp in the distance. Roar! Lishimbo roared angrily again. He didn't even look at the immortal who had injured him. With a sway of his body, he pounced on the female immortal who had been knocked down by him. This bastard is crazy. The others were furious to see Li Xinbo like this. An immortal monarch even made a move to imprison him. However, even though he was restrained, Li Xinbo continued to roar and struggle, wanting to pounce on the female immortal. At the same time, among the 10 billion people, Li Xinbo's situation appeared one after another. Not long after, at least 100 million weaker immortals were in the same situation. Immediately, the people in the group realized what was going on. These people seemed to have been poisoned, and the pink fog in the swamp was probably the culprit. Imprison those people and leave this damned swamp as soon as possible. An immortal lord roared and was about to fly away. Yes, he was about to fly away and continue walking on the ground. Boom! However, at this moment, a loud sound was heard. Li Xinbo, who was the first to react, suddenly exploded. What's going on? Seeing that Li Xinbo had actually exploded by himself, the surrounding people were shocked. However, before they could figure out what was going on, a series of loud sounds came from the group. The immortals who had been poisoned and imprisoned were being blasted apart one after another. It was very strange. Don't care about them. Hurry up and leave this swamp. Someone shouted. Thus, everyone flew up. However, in this short period of time, many more immortals were poisoned. In a few breaths of time, more than 500 million people showed the same symptoms as Li Xinbo. In fact, they weren't poisoned in a short period of time. It was just that they had already been invaded by the pink morning. Now it was finally acting up. Moreover, these 500 million people weren't the end. It was just the beginning. More and more immortals began to act up. Want to leave here? Too late. Murongyu suddenly rose from the depths of the swamp and sneered, unleashing his most violent attack. Boom, boom, boom. Murongyu's first move was his ultimate move. Spatial Storm, omnidirectional kill, and other AoE moves were constantly unleashed by him. Every time he attacked, a large number of immortals would fall. These 10 billion people were too densely packed. Murongyu casually threw a punch, and tens of millions of immortals fell like raindrops. During this process, Murongyu increased his speed to the maximum. He turned into a stream of light and constantly moved through the swamp. Every time he appeared, immortals would fall like raindrops. In that place, Murongyu hadn't even paused for an instant. Because of this, the people of the Divine Union couldn't attack him at all. They could only be killed by Murongyu. In a few breaths of time, hundreds of millions of people had been killed by Murongyu. In addition to those who had been blown up by the pink morning, more than 1/10 of the 10 billion people had been killed. In other words, more than 1 billion people had been killed in a few breaths of time. Boom! While Murongyu was on the move, killing the immortals, Murongyu suddenly stopped. Suddenly, a violent aura surpassing that of an immortal emperor erupted from the crowd and soared into the sky. Mo-fo, you actually appeared. Today I will take you down. A furious roar was heard as a figure soared into the sky from the crowd like a rock spreading its wings and pounced on Murongyu. During this process, he suddenly threw out a huge hand, shattering the sky and crushing countless voids as he swatted at Murongyu. Immortal Venerate? Murongyu wasn't surprised. Instead, he was delighted. 1,000-army elephant fist. He roared and threw out a punch. You are courting death. The immortal Venerate from the Divine Union sneered disdainfully. His huge hand suddenly accelerated and collided with Murongyu's fist. Chapter 728. In the blink of an eye, Murongyu's fist and the immortal Venerable's hand collided fiercely. At the moment of collision, time seemed to have stopped. The fist and the hand seemed to have condensed in the void. However, this did not last for even 1/100th of a second. Rumble! All of a sudden, an earth-shattering sound reverberated between heaven and earth. In the air, Murongyu's fist exploded with a kacha sound. At the same time, an extremely terrifying shockwave swept out in all directions from the place where the two sides clashed. The void was instantly shattered and annihilated by the terrifying impact force. In less than a tenth of a second, this terrifying impact had already swept across a radius of 1,000,000 miles. Wherever the impact passed, everything was annihilated. A late immortal emperor let out an incomparably shrill shriek. He, who was fleeing in panic, was caught up by the terrifying impact. Then, he was directly swallowed by the terrifying impact and was crushed into fine powder. Even a late-stage immortal emperor expert was crushed into powder without being able to escape. One could imagine how terrifying the impact was, not to mention immortals of other realms. Puff, puff, puff. Wherever the impact passed, the void was annihilated. In an instant, the terrifying impact swept across a radius of 1,000,000 miles. In an instant, billions of immortals within a radius of 1,000,000 miles were all crushed into powder. After a crisp cracking sound, the immortal venerable's hand finally couldn't withstand the terrifying impact and was crushed into powder. Puff! A terrifying force bombarded Murong Yu's body, causing Murong Yu to feel as if he was hit by a divine mountain. At this moment, his entire body felt like it was about to shatter. He felt a sweetness in his throat and couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. What a terrifying force! Murong Yu was blasted hundreds of millions of miles away before he stabilized his body. The life force in his body surged crazily. After a few rounds, his injuries were all healed. Yu Jia, Hichu Luo Shu. Murong Yu's mind moved, and at the same time, he summoned the feather armor and the Hichu Luo Shu to protect himself. He did not run away, nor did he plan to use the heaven and earth bow and heaven-shocking arrow to kill this immortal reverend. This was a good opportunity for him to have a great battle with this early immortal venerable. Moreover, he might even break through in the process of the battle. This is Hichu Luo Shu. Zheng Weiyu rushed over and looked at Hichu Luo Shu, who was floating above Murong Yu's head and shrouding Murong Yu in yellow divine light. Zheng Weiyu's face was filled with greed. Brat, as long as you give me the Hichu Luo Shu, I can consider sparing your life. In fact, I can even accept you as my disciple. Zheng Weiyu didn't immediately make a move. Instead, he spoke to Murong Yu with a face full of greed. You mean I should give you the Hichu Luo Shu as a gift to become your disciple? Then become your disciple? Murong Yu sneered as he looked at Zheng Weiyu. Exactly. Otherwise, you won't be able to protect the Hichu Luo Shu with your strength. Why don't you give it to me, and I'll keep it for you? Zheng Weiyu said in a deep voice. His eyes flickered as he spoke. Ha ha! Murong Yu suddenly burst into laughter. After a long time, under Zheng Weiyu's impatient expression, Murong Yu stopped laughing and sneered. I really wonder how you managed to cultivate to the immortal venerable realm. How could you be such an idiot? All of you are the same. Or do you think you can kill me today? Zheng Weiyu glared at Murong Yu with murderous intent. Since that's the case, then you can die. As he spoke, he took a step forward and shattered the void, charging towards Murong Yu. Spatial barrier, spatial barrier, spatial storm, spatial slash. Murong Yu shouted in his heart. In an instant, he launched hundreds of millions of attacks towards Zheng Weiyu. Brat, today I'll let you know what true strength is, what it means to be vulnerable, and what it means to be a treasure. Zheng Weiyu sneered. Divine light flickered on his body as he soared into the sky. God-slaying palm. Zheng Weiyu roared and struck out with his palm. A giant golden palm condensed in the sky and erupted with a terrifying force. It shattered the void and caused the sky to tremble. Then, he ruthlessly swatted his hand down at Murong Yu. Suddenly, a giant golden palm print appeared in the sky. This was because the giant golden palm had created a huge hole in the void. As for Murong Yu's spatial shackles, spatial armbands, and the like, they all shattered in the face of the giant golden palm. They couldn't even withstand a single blow. There's at least 150 dragon force. It's double of my strength. Murong Yu's facial expression changed slightly when he saw the incoming giant palm. Although Zheng Weiyu's god-extinguishing palm was just an exaggeration, ordinary early immortal venerables wouldn't be able to withstand this attack. With my current strength, I'm afraid I won't be able to withstand this palm, even with the feather armor and the Hichu Luoshu world. However, I won't be so stupid as to face it head-on, Murong-yu thought. Immediately, a pair of giant black wings appeared on his back. Asterisk swoosh. Asterisk the black wings flapped violently, shattering the void. Murong-yu took advantage of the momentum and turned into a wisp of black light, flying towards the distance. Asterisk Hong Long. Asterisk the moment he flew away, the giant golden palm had already slammed down. A terrifying force erupted, instantly evaporating the swamp below and the ground within a radius of 1,000,000 miles. Looking down from the void, an incomparably huge palm print appeared above the swamp. It was so deep that the bottom couldn't be seen. Asterisk poo. Asterisk Murong-yu spurted out a mouthful of blood. Although his speed was unparalleled in the world, he was still grazed by the aftershock of the god-slaying palm. The incomparably terrifying force instantly injured him. However, his injuries were completely healed after being cleansed by the force of life. God-slaying fist. Zheng Weiyu was infuriated when he saw Murong-yu escaping. He roared and threw out a punch. A golden fist appeared in the sky. As it vibrated, a terrifying force burst out, shattering hundreds of millions of heavens and penetrating through hundreds of millions of space-time, charging towards Murong-yu. The power of this bastard's god-slaying combat technique is really shocking. God-slaying palm, God-slaying fist, I wonder if he still has God-slaying finger, God-slaying claw or something like that. Murong-yu thought in his heart. His speed wasn't slow at all as he continued to fly forward. There was nothing he could do about it. Murong-yu's original plan was to have a great battle with Zheng Weiyu. Although he knew that Zheng Weiyu was a ruthless man, he still couldn't fight back. Given the power of his god-slaying combat technique, he was afraid that he could even contend with an intermediate immortal venerable expert. It was a total of 800,000 more Earth Dragon force than Murong-yu. It was true that Murong-yu's strength could contend against an ordinary early immortal venerable, but it was only limited to between 1,000,000 and 1,000,000 Earth Dragon force. Murong-yu was powerless to do anything if it exceeded 1,000,000 Earth Dragon energy points. He could only flee upon hearing the news. Just like now, he couldn't fight Zheng Weiyu directly. God-slaying finger. Zheng Weiyu roared and pointed his finger at Murong-yu. Like a sword, he ruthlessly slashed at him. This made Murong-yu roll his eyes. This guy's combat technique was just as he had expected. However, it was undeniable that the power of this combat technique was indeed terrifying. Murong-yu sneered in his heart. So what if your combat technique is powerful? I don't believe that you can unleash such a powerful combat technique without a limit. I don't believe that your power is like mine, endless and limitless. Once your strength is exhausted, it will be your time to die. Zheng Weiyu was extremely anxious at this moment. He desperately wanted to get his hands on Hichu Luoshu. Therefore, he immediately unleashed his strongest attack, God-slaying combat technique. However, the energy consumption of the God-slaying combat technique was too terrifying. He had a limited number of techniques. If he couldn't kill Murong-yu within a certain period of time, it would be a tragedy for him. No matter what, even if my strength is exhausted, I have to get my hands on Hichu Luoshu. Zheng Weiyu gritted his teeth as he thought. A god-slaying claw tore through space and time and clawed at Murong-yu. However, what made him vexed was that Murong-yu had easily dodged his attack. Murong-yu's speed was too terrifying. Even though his god-slaying combat technique was powerful, it couldn't do anything to Murong-yu's speed. Zheng Weiyu even had a bad feeling. He felt that he might not be able to catch up to Murong-yu. His strength is indeed severely depleted. The god-slaying combat technique can only be used twice at most. It definitely won't be used more than 3 times. The Pink Death should be acting up. Murong-yu flew as he paid attention to Zheng Weiyu's situation. Fortunately, my speed is unparalleled. Otherwise, I could only escape through Hichu Luoshu. I might not even be able to enter Hichu Luoshu. If it was an expert with 2 million Earth Dragon power, I'm afraid it would be difficult for me to escape. What's going on? Why do I feel a burst of heat? Even lust. Zheng Weiyu suddenly felt strange as he chased after Morongyu. I've never been close to a woman in my life. I'm even an old virgin. Why am I having thoughts about a woman now? Zheng Weiyu was shocked, because at this moment, he actually had lust for a woman. To him, this was really strange. Wait, could it be? Zheng Weiyu suddenly thought of those people who were affected by the Pink Death. Hence, he took a look at his own body. With this look, he almost couldn't help but fall from the sky. Chapter 729. Zheng Weiyu could only see that his exposed skin was red, as if it was bleeding. Even his pores were oozing out traces of blood. I'm done for. I've been poisoned. Zheng Weiyu's body swayed, and he almost fell from the sky. At this moment, he was even more shocked to discover that his lust for women was growing stronger. The intense lust and desire made him almost unable to stop himself from leaving. He wanted to find a woman to satisfy his bestial desires. No, am I an old virgin for hundreds of billions of years, going to give up like this? Impossible. I'm a high and mighty immortal supremacy. How can this drug affect me? Zheng Weiyu roared in his heart and began to circulate his energy to expel the pink morning. However, what shocked him even more was that he didn't find any traces of the pink morning in his body. His body didn't seem to be poisoned at all. Soul! Zheng Weiyu suddenly exclaimed because he saw that his soul was already in a state of excitement. His soul was extremely excited and seemed to be about to collapse. Seeing this, Zheng Weiyu was scared out of his wits. He believed in his own strength. If it was his physical body, he believed that he could expel the pink morning. The drug was expelled. However, if it was his soul, there was nothing he could do. In fact, there weren't many people in the immortal realm who had a deep understanding of the soul. Moreover, no one practiced any cultivation techniques related to the soul. It wasn't that soul cultivation techniques were difficult to cultivate. In fact, there were almost no cultivation techniques related to the soul in the immortal realm. After all, the soul was too mysterious. All this time, no immortal had truly understood the soul. A person could see his own soul and attack the souls of others. When a soul was injured, it could be repaired with all kinds of treasures or wait for the soul to heal itself. However, there had never been a cultivation technique that could repair the soul. Therefore, when Zheng Weiyu saw that his soul had been invaded by the pink morning, he was scared half to death. Whoosh! Zheng Weiyu's flying figure stopped. His expression kept changing. No one knew what he was thinking. My soul has been invaded. I can't expel the pink morning. The drug has been expelled. However, if I don't expel it, I'm afraid I'll end up like those people and explode. No, I must expel the pink morning. I can only let this kid go for now. Zheng Weiyu thought in his heart. His figure flickered and actually shot towards the back. He gave up on pursuing Morongyu. Whoosh! While Zheng Weiyu was escaping, Morongyu's figure flashed and chased after him. Space slash, space storm, space imprisonment, space barrier. Morongyu's speed was extremely fast, much faster than Zheng Weiyu's. Under his full speed, he quickly caught up. All of a sudden, he unleashed a series of ultimate moves towards Zheng Weiyu in a frenzy. At this moment, Zheng Weiyu's pores had already begun to bleed. The desire in his heart, the hope grew stronger and stronger. He could even feel that he was slowly fading away. Because of this, he became even more anxious. He just wanted to find a place to expel the poison. However, what made him furious was that Morongyu, who was originally being chased by him, had chased after him like a shadow. Zheng Weiyu was extremely furious. Although Morongyu couldn't kill him for the time being, Morongyu didn't need to kill him at all. He only needed to delay him and prevent him from expelling the poison. Then he would explode and die. Naturally, Zheng Weiyu wouldn't let Morongyu have his way. God-killing palm. Zheng Weiyu roared and turned around to hit Morongyu with his palm. A terrifying power erupted and bombarded the heavens and the earth. The sun and the moon dimmed and the sky trembled. However, Morongyu was like a prophet. When Zheng Weiyu attacked, he flickered and retreated. Zheng Weiyu's attack didn't even hit Morongyu's clothes, let alone kill Morongyu. Despicable. Zheng Weiyu roared and didn't chase after Morongyu. He turned around and flew away. However, Morongyu soon caught up with him and launched a peerless attack. Zheng Weiyu's rage soared to the heavens, and he was enraged. However, when Zheng Weiyu wanted to turn around and kill Morongyu, Morongyu used his speed to escape. When Zheng Weiyu was about to escape, Morongyu chased after him again. After this happened over and over again, Zheng Weiyu was so infuriated that he wanted nothing more than to kill Morongyu right there and then. However, he couldn't do anything to Morongyu. Moreover, during this process, he was shocked to find that he was gradually being engulfed. His soul was on the verge of igniting. Once his soul started burning, he wouldn't be far from death. At this moment, as they chased after each other, the 10 billion immortals who had been hit by the pink morning were almost all dead. At least 90% of them had died. Of course, most of them were killed by the pink morning, while the rest were killed by the shockwaves of the battle between Morongyu and Zheng Weiyu. In other words, most of the 10 billion immortals were dead. Even if there were still some alive, it was probably less than 1%. This was because Morongyu could feel his stars increasing rapidly. Zheng Weiyu should be almost there. He shouldn't be able to hold on for too long. He won't be able to suppress the power of the pink death, and his soul will be destroyed. His body will explode, and he'll die. Morongyu calmly chased after Zheng Weiyu as he thought to himself. Zheng Weiyu's entire body was dyed red by the blood that was seeping out. At the same time, his eyes were bloodshot and dazed. His consciousness was gradually fading, and he was about to regain control. Roar! Suddenly, Zheng Weiyu let out an explosive roar. His body paused. Then he abruptly turned around and charged towards Morongyu. Seeing this, Morongyu was overjoyed. This was because Zheng Weiyu had completely lost his mind. At this moment, he was only driven by the desire in his heart. He charged at Su Mo and treated Su Mo as a woman that he could vent his anger on. Kill! With a roar, Morongyu charged forward and engaged in a fierce battle with Zheng Weiyu. Morongyu didn't feel the slightest bit of pressure as he fought with Zheng Weiyu, who had lost his mind. With his strength and his invincible speed, Zheng Weiyu couldn't get close to him at all. Boom! Finally, Morongyu cut Zheng Weiyu into two with a space slash. However, Zheng Weiyu didn't die. He roared, and the two halves of his body charged forward, trying to recombine. However, how could Morongyu let this happen? Space Storm. Space Tear. He unleashed all sorts of ultimate moves. Instantly, countless terrifying energies enveloped Zheng Weiyu. I can't accept this. Zheng Weiyu roared, but he couldn't resist Morongyu's attacks. He was blasted into smithereens. Boom! Boom! The moment Zheng Weiyu was killed, the entire battlefield started to change. Blood clouds, blood rain, and blood-colored lightning enveloped the entire battlefield and exploded wildly. An immortal venerate has fallen on the battlefield. Countless powerhouses from the Immortal Realm Alliance in Dazhou and the Divine Union in the north of the battlefield saw this phenomenon when it appeared. It couldn't be helped. This phenomenon was too terrifying. It was impossible for them not to see it. An immortal venerate has fallen on the battlefield. Who exactly is it? Go investigate. A senior official from the Immortal Realm Alliance in Dazhou roared. At the same time, the Divine Union had the same reaction. An immortal venerate was an extremely important fighting force for both the Divine Union and the Immortal Realm Alliance. They were existences that meant one less immortal venerate, which immortal venerate didn't hold a high position on both sides. Which one of them wasn't a senior official? Furthermore, immortal venerate powerhouses weren't allowed to enter the battlefield. This phenomenon seems to be a little more intense. It's at least 10 times more intense than when an immortal venerate was killed in Feng City. However, I'm afraid that the immortal venerates from the Divine Union or the Immortal Realm Alliance will discover that an immortal venerate has fallen here. It would be best if an immortal venerate from the Divine Union comes over Yeah. Speaking of the devil, an immortal venerate has actually come over. Furthermore, it's from the divine union. However, this person is also an early stage immortal venerate. It would still be a little difficult for Luo Yunyang to kill him given his strength. Once more people come over, I won't be able to bear the consequences. I'll just kill him with a single blow. Murong Yu's body flickered. He didn't retreat. Instead, he met the immortal venerate that had shot over. In the end, he stopped when there was a certain distance between them. His hands made a series of grabbing motions in the void, and the cosmic bow and the sky-shaking arrow were instantly caught in his hands. Roar! With a roar, Murong Yu knocked an arrow on his bow and released it. What's going on? The immortal venerate from the divine union rushed over. Before he could figure out what was going on, he saw a ray of golden light shatter the void and rush out with a destructive aura that could destroy the heavens and earth. At this moment, the immortal venerate was taken aback as he felt the aura of death enveloping him. He immediately realized what was going on. With a loud roar, he instantly raised his strength to the limit and punched out with both his fists towards the sky-shaking arrow. Puffed. His strength couldn't block the sky-shaking arrow at all. He was directly shattered into pieces by the sky-shaking arrow. After that, the heaven-quake arrow didn't stop at all as it charged into his body and shot out from behind him. What's going on? The immortal venerate only had time for this thought to flash through his mind before his vision turned black and his consciousness dissipated completely. Immediately after, his entire body exploded into a cloud of blood mist and dissipated between heaven and earth. Rumble. The change in heaven and earth was getting more and more terrifying. The blood rain, blood clouds, and blood lightning that were originally as red as blood had now turned black. What's going on? Another immortal venerate has fallen. The people from the Divine Union and the Immortal World Alliance were going crazy. Chapter 730. The fall of two immortal venerates made the Divine Union and the Immortal Realm Alliance go crazy. Before this, no immortal venerate powerhouses had fallen in millions of years. However, two of them had fallen in succession. Regardless of whether they were from the Divine Union or the Immortal Realm Alliance, it was a huge loss. If the two of them were from the same side, the loss would be even more terrifying. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. On Dajo's side, several terrifying auras rose into the air. They left Dajo and flew towards the battlefield. From a distance, it seemed like there were 7 of them. 7 immortal venerates. The Immortal Realm Alliance powerhouses in the Dajo couldn't help but gasp, because the 7 experts that flew towards the battlefield were all immortal venerables. At the same time, several immortal venerates from the Divine Union gathered and rushed towards the battlefield. 2 immortal venerates had fallen in succession, so they had no choice but to be cautious. On the battlefield, after Murong Yu killed the immortal venerable, he disappeared with a swoosh. He knew that there would be more and more immortal venerates coming over. Furthermore, the Immortal Realm Alliance and the Divine Union might even start fighting over the deaths of Zheng Weiyu and Luo Yunyang. If the immortal venerates from both sides started fighting, Murong Yu would be able to reap the benefits. Therefore, he entered the Hichu Luoshu world, intending to hide in the vicinity. However, just as he entered the world of He-Tu and Luoshu, his expression changed. Then, his face was filled with ecstasy. Whoosh! Murong Yu appeared directly in front of Hichu. Hichu, you said that you have finally analyzed the D-Break elixir? Can you manufacture it in batches? Murong Yu asked impatiently after appearing. Hichu nodded and flipped his hand. A faint halo of light appeared in his palm. It was an elixir the size of a pigeon's egg. It was the D-Break elixir. Murong Yu, who was delighted, asked again, how many D-Break elixirs are there? 1 million, and they are still being manufactured. However, creating the breakthrough Emperor Pill requires a large amount of resources, and the current stock of immortal veins can't support it for long. Immortal meridians are not a problem. I have as many as I want. Murong Yu is not lacking in immortal meridians. Now that we can mass-produce emperor-breaking pills, Shenzhen, Celestial Palace, and Heavenly Court will be able to produce a large number of immortal emperors. If all the people in the three forces were to reach the immortal emperor realm, they would be invincible in the immortal world. Although Murong Yu did not have any celestial venerables in his forces, he was still a celestial venerable. However, immortal venerables weren't invincible. So what if the Immortal Realm Alliance has tens of thousands of immortal venerables? If Murong Yu brought the trillions of immortal sovereigns from the three major powers, these tens of thousands of immortal venerables would be killed even though they were powerful. Of course, this method was to kill 1,000 enemies at the cost of 800 of their own men. If an immortal venerable went berserk and rushed into the crowd, Murong Yu's forces would suffer heavy losses. However, Murong Yu is not foolish enough to let this happen. I'm afraid that many immortal venerables have already entered the battlefield. With my strength, it's unrealistic to try to take advantage of the situation. Well, I'll go back and raise everyone's cultivation first. Once they reach the immortal emperor realm, I'll establish the third major power in the immortal world, destroy the divine union and the immortal world alliance, and unify the immortal world. Murong Yu pondered for a moment, and then teleported back to Shenzhen. 1 million emperor-breaking pills won't be enough to raise 1 million people to the immortal emperor realm. Well, I'll raise the strength of 100,000 people in Shenzhen's 4 battle teams first. Their combat strength is the strongest in Shenzhen, and their cooperation is seamless. They're the most suitable for team battles. After Murong Yu appeared in Shenzhen, he gathered the 100,000 people, including Zhang Ao, Duan Muqing, and the others. Everyone, you should be very clear about the current situation in the immortal world. The Divine Union and the Immortal World Alliance are fighting to unify the immortal world. If either side wins and unifies the immortal world, it won't be a good thing for us. At that time, although the immortal world is big, there won't be any place for us. We can't allow this to happen. What should we do? Destroy the Immortal World Alliance and the Divine Union. We, Shenzhen, will unify the immortal world. The 100,000 people below roared in unison. Very good. However, given our current strength, we are no match for the Divine Union and the Immortal World Alliance. If we want to compete with them, or even destroy them, we can only raise our strength. Raise our individual strength, and raise our overall strength. Now, I have the Emperor-breaking pills that can help all of you break through to the Immortal Emperor realm. You're the first batch of people to take the Emperor-breaking pills. You guys are not test subjects. You are the strongest team in Glory Sect in terms of overall combat power. In the future, we, Shenzhen, will have to rely on you to conquer the world and unify the immortal world. Therefore, your priority is to raise your cultivation base. However, you also know that some people in the late-stage Immortal Emperor realm can sense the divine tribulation. Here, I want to ask everyone, do you believe me? Yes. The crowd shouted without hesitation. Murong Yu nodded and continued loudly. Since you believe in me, then I'll ask you to give up on your chance to transcend the tribulation if you sense it. This is because we, Shenzhen, will still have to rely on you to unify the immortal world. If we sense the divine tribulation, we will not undergo it. We will choose to become immortal supremacies and not undergo the divine tribulation. The crowd shouted in unison. A smile appeared on Murong Yu's face as he continued. You trust me that much? You have to know that if you give up on the Immortal Emperor realm, you might not be able to sense the divine tribulation even after reaching the Immortal Supremacy realm. Moreover, the Immortal Supremacy realm's divine tribulation is more than 1,000 times more dangerous than the Immortal Emperor realm's divine tribulation. Could it be that you want to give up the opportunity to become a god? We believe in the Holy Lord. Even if we can't sense the divine tribulation, we believe that after the Holy Lord becomes a god, all of us will become gods, just like all of us will ascend and become immortals. Very good, since you all believe in me. In that case, I'll also make a promise to all of you. As long as I ascend to godhood, all of you, including the entire sage sect, will be able to ascend to godhood and ascend to the god realm. Morong solemnly promised. These people believed in him unconditionally. This made him feel touched. Moreover, he also knew that even if he didn't make these promises and didn't explain, even if he only asked them not to undergo the divine tribulation when they become immortal emperors, these people would still agree without hesitation. Not only them, but the entire Shenzhen celestial palace and even the heavenly courts people would do the same. Of course, the heavenly courts people might not have as much faith in him as Shenzhen and celestial palace, but in the end, they would still believe in him. In that case, you all can start breaking through. For the time being, each of you will be given 10 breakthrough emperor pills. Don't worry about not having enough breakthrough emperor pills. Don't worry about not having enough immortal veins. The only thing you all need to do is to increase your strength as much as you can. Raise your strength to the highest level, preferably to the immortal supremacy realm. Holy Lord, this is too difficult. However, we will try our best. A woman suddenly smiled and said. Morong stared at her and said, "What's your name?" "Holy Lord, my name is Huang Ying." "Huang Ying, right? This time, if you don't help me reach the late immortal emperor realm, then you can wait for my punishment." Morong said faintly. Huang Ying rolled her eyes and said, "Holy Lord, your request is too high. I'm afraid I can't do it. I have plenty of resources here. If you still can't do it, you know what to do. In that case, I'll go cultivate." Huang Ying's figure flashed and disappeared in front of Morong. Then, the 100,000 people dispersed. However, they didn't leave Hichu Luo Shu. They just kept a certain distance from each other. In fact, Morong had even divided the space into 100,000 smaller spaces. Each space was about 1,000,000 miles in size. This way, even if some of them broke through, it wouldn't affect the others. In addition to the 10 breakthrough emperor pills, each person also received a mountain of immortal veins. Time acceleration. Seeing that everyone had started to consume the breakthrough emperor pills, Morong began to burn his immortal veins to accelerate time. 1,000,000 times the time acceleration is the limit of what they can endure. However, some of them have a stronger endurance. They can endure 5 million or 2 million times the time acceleration. Yes, the time acceleration varies from person to person. Those with a stronger endurance will have a longer time acceleration. Morong said inwardly as he began to adjust the time acceleration in each area. 1,000,000 times the time acceleration. After a day in the immortal world, more than 2,000 years would have passed. Therefore, in less than an hour of time acceleration, Morong saw people breaking through in one of the regions. These people's strength had already reached the peak of the late stage immortal monarch realm, and they had been trying to break through to the immortal emperor realm. However, how could it be so easy to break through to the immortal emperor realm? Although they were all geniuses, it was still extremely difficult for them to break through to the immortal emperor realm. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so few immortal emperors in the immortal world. Boom, boom, boom. Under the effects of the breakthrough emperor pills, countless immortal veins, and time acceleration, people continued to break through to the immortal emperor realm. As for those who broke through to the immortal emperor realm, after stabilizing their cultivation, they continued to break through early immortal emperor realm, intermediate immortal emperor realm, and even late immortal emperor realm. Seeing everyone's strength continue to increase, Morong felt envious. If he could rely on these pills to break through, it would be great. Then, he would be able to break through to the immortal emperor realm or even the immortal supremacy realm. However, it was a pity that these breakthrough emperor pills and breakthrough supremacy pills were useful to others, but they were useless to him. Chapter 731. In less than half a day in the immortal world, the 100,000 people cultivating in the Hichu Luoshu world had all broken through to the immortal emperor realm. In other words, from this moment on, Morong had 100,000 immortal emperors under him. although it was still not comparable to the Immortal World Alliance and the Divine Union. However, in terms of the number of immortal emperors, he had already defeated all the major forces in the immortal world. Even the three giants of the immortal world did not have 100,000 immortal emperors. Perhaps the three giants and the Heavenly Punisher Palace did. However, the other super forces definitely did not have 100,000 immortal emperors. Moreover, this was not Morong Yu's final strength. 100,000 immortal emperors was just the beginning. As long as Morong Yu was willing and given some time, he would have 1,000,000, 10,000,000, or even more immortal emperors. This was because he did not lack emperor breakthrough pills and resources. With an endless supply of elixirs and resources, Morong Yu could forcefully raise the strength of his people. After 100,000 people had broken through to the immortal emperor realm, Morong Yu did not let them stop cultivating immediately. Instead, he let them continue for another 10 days. 10 days. Under the acceleration of time, more than 20,000 years had passed. At this moment, among the 100,000 people in the 4 battle teams, there were already people who had broken through to the late-stage Immortal Emperor realm. However, most of them were only early-stage Immortal Emperors. A small number of them had reached the mid-stage Immortal Emperor realm. Those who had reached the late-stage Immortal Emperor realm were few and far between. Although the 3 minor realms of the Immortal Emperor realm were not as difficult to break through as the major realms, they were still minor realms. Even with the accumulation of endless resources, it was not something that could be broken through in a short period of time. At this moment, a large number of Emperor Breakthrough pills were produced. This time, there were still only 1,000,000 pills. 1,000,000 Emperor Breakthrough pills, in addition to the 500,000 that had not been used previously. Duan Muqing and the rest of the 100,000 people used 50 of them to break through to the Immortal Emperor realm. On average, each person would need to consume 5 Emperor Breakthrough pills to break through to the next realm. Of course, this was only the average. Some people could break through after consuming 1 pill, while others needed to consume 10 pills in a row. On average, 5 pills can break through to the next realm. This batch can allow 300,000 people to break through to the Immortal Emperor realm. Morong Yu thought to himself as he sent Black Tiger and the others into the Hichu Luoshu world. This time, it wasn't just Shangzhen's disciples, but also some of the higher-ups from the 3 factions who had more potential were all taken into the Hichu Luoshu world. Of course, it was impossible for the geniuses of the 3 major powers to only have 300,000 disciples. However, this couldn't be helped. The Breakthrough Emperor pill wasn't like the Breakthrough King pill or the Breakthrough Monarch pill. It could be produced in an instant. With the current production capacity of the Yin Yang Cauldron, it could only produce 100,000 pills a day. In other words, Morong Yu could train 20,000 people every day. I'm still not strong enough. If I were to reach the Immortal Reverent realm, I'm afraid that the Yin Yang Cauldron would be able to produce trillions of Emperor Breakthrough pills in a single day. Morong Yu felt somewhat helpless as he watched He, Hu, and the others break through. Not long ago, he discovered that the Yin Yang Cauldron's ability to analyze pill recipes and create pills was actually closely related to him. The stronger he was, the stronger the ability of the Yin Yang Cauldron. In other words, if Morong Yu obtained the Breakthrough Monarch pill now, the Yin Yang Cauldron could analyze the pill recipe. However, it would take a very long time. Moreover, even if it could analyze it, it would be difficult to produce it. The Yin Yang Cauldron could produce 100,000 Breakthrough Emperor pills a day, but it might not be able to produce 1 Breakthrough Monarch pill in 10 days. Another month later, the number of immortal emperors under Morong Yu had already exceeded 1,000,000. Although most of the immortal emperors were at the initial stage of the Immortal Emperor realm, only a small number of them had reached the advanced stage of the Immortal Emperor realm. However, this strength was still very terrifying. Although the Immortal Emperor realm was still far inferior to the Immortal Realm Alliance and the Divine Union, it had become the 3rd major power after the Divine Union and the Immortal Realm Alliance. There was no doubt about it. However, If Morong Yu made Shenzhen public now and made it the third major power of the immortal realm, he would still be destroyed even with his current strength. At that time, the Divine Union and the Immortal Realm Alliance would join forces to destroy Shenzhen. After all, Shenzhen's Immortal Emperor realm was far inferior to the two major alliances, not to mention the Immortal Venerate powerhouses in the two major alliances. Based on this speed, I'm afraid it will take a very long time to catch up with the two major alliances. By then, it will be too late. However, if I want to quickly increase the strength of my faction or my own strength, I just need to increase my own strength. As long as my strength increases, the production of the Breakthrough Emperor Pill will increase as well. If I want to break through, cultivating in seclusion is the stupidest way. The best way is to kill the enforcers. Alright, let's return to the Immortal Realm Alliance first. Morong Yu sent the people who had already broken through and consolidated their strength back to the sect. Then, he appeared in Dazhou in a flash. The two major alliances are fighting on the battlefield? Even immortal venerates have fallen? Morong Yu had just returned to Dazhou when he heard this shocking news. After asking around, Morong Yu finally understood the whole story. It turned out that after he had killed two immortal venerates, the upper echelons of the Immortal Realm Alliance and the Divine Union had been shaken. Countless powerhouses had entered the battlefield. So many immortal venerates had entered the battlefield, so it was inevitable that they would encounter each other. Once the two opposing sides encountered each other, it would be a battle. At the beginning, the immortal venerates of both sides had encountered each other and fought. However, both sides were very restrained and didn't go all out. Therefore, although some immortal venerates had been injured, no one had been killed. However, as the situation intensified, there were finally casualties. At the beginning, an immortal venerate of the Immortal Realm Alliance had been ambushed by many immortal venerates of the Divine Union and had been killed. When this news spread, the Immortal Realm Alliance was immediately enraged. Immediately, more immortal venerates rushed into the battlefield and killed 3 immortal venerates of the Divine Union. In the end, both major factions went crazy. Countless immortal venerates were fighting frantically on the battlefield. After 10 people from the Immortal Realm Alliance had died and 9 people from the Divine Union had died, both sides suddenly stopped. This time, it seemed like the Immortal Realm Alliance had suffered a heavier loss. However, if the 2 immortal venerates that had been killed by Morong Yu were included, the Divine Union had lost 1 more immortal venerate. At the moment, the feud between the 2 major factions was as deep as the ocean. From immortal venerates to heavenly immortals, they would fight frantically whenever they encountered each other. However, after the immortal venerates left the battlefield, both sides had their own victories and losses. The real decisive battle hasn't arrived yet. However, this is a good thing. The later the decisive battle comes, the better it will be for me. What I lack most now is time. Now that the 2 major factions were confronting each other, Morong Yu had time to develop. After the final battle between the 2 forces, one side would definitely be defeated, and the victor would unify the immortal world. At that time, no matter how big the immortal realm was, there would be no place for Morong Yu to survive, let alone develop his power. However, I can't kill immortal venerates now. Otherwise, it'll be very disadvantageous for me if both sides start fighting and the decisive battle accelerates. I can only kill those small fries now. Should I exchange my military merits for a position in the army, or continue to fight? Before Morong Yu returned, he counted his identity tokens and discovered that there were tens of billions of them. Among the tens of billions of identity tokens, a significant portion of them belonged to celestial emperors. With these identity medallions, Morong Yu would at least be a lieutenant. He might even become a general, even though he would only be the lowest rank of lieutenant general. However, I'm only a celestial duke after all. Many of them belong to late-stage celestial emperors and even titled celestial emperors. Won't people suspect me if I carry so many identity tokens? Morong Yu thought to himself. However, he quickly dispelled this thought. After all, He had just heard that many people in the army were doing the same thing. After all, it was not uncommon for people to kill people with a higher cultivation base than them. In the military merit hall, Murong Yu, who had disguised himself as Mo Fo, bowed respectfully and said, "My lord, I'm here to exchange my identity tokens for military merits." All four of them were celestial venerates. They were the elders of the Heavenly Wrath Palace, the Celestial Palace, the Saint Gate, and the Devil Sect. Overseeing the military merit hall, they were the Grand Elders of the military merit hall. One of the Grand Elders of the Celestial Palace opened his eyes and looked at Murong Yu indifferently. "I heard you've obtained a lot of identity tokens?" Although they were the overseers of the military merit hall, not everyone who came to submit their military merits were represented by them. They were the Grand Elders of the military merit hall. Most of the matters were handled by their subordinates. They had only come because they had heard from their subordinates that Murong Yu had a lot of identity tokens. Otherwise, they wouldn't have come. Yes, Murong Yu pretended to be respectful as he handed over a storage ring and his identity medallion. "You're a disciple of the Heavenly Wrath Palace? Or enforcer?" The eyes of the Grand Elder of the Heavenly Wrath Palace lit up when he saw Murong Yu's identity token. At the same time, he grabbed Murong Yu's storage ring with his big hand. "Yes, this disciple is enforcer of the Heavenly Wrath Palace. I'm in charge of the wind and fire cultivation world." Murong Yu pretended to be respectful and replied, "Very good." The Grand Elder of the Heavenly Wrath Palace nodded and probed the storage ring with his divine sense. Immediately, a look of shock appeared on his face. "Very good, very good. With so many identity tokens, you'll be able to become a lieutenant general if you exchange them for military merits." The Grand Elder of the Heavenly Wrath Palace laughed heartily. The other three elders were shocked when they heard the Grand Elder of the Heavenly Wrath Palace. They quickly probed the storage ring with their divine sense. Immediately, their faces were filled with shock. Chapter 732. Tens of billions of identity tokens. When they saw the identity tokens in Murong Yu's storage ring, the Grand Elders of the other three forces were shocked. With these military merits, it shouldn't be a problem to confer the title of Lieutenant General to Mo Fo, right? Sun Lu, the Grand Elder of the Heavenly Punisher Palace, looked at the other three and said, "Lieutenant General is already a general and a high-ranking officer in the army. Although Mo Fo's military merits are enough, we need to discuss it before we can decide," one of the Grand Elders of the Immortal Palace said. The two Grand Elders of the Holy Gate and the Devil's Sect also nodded, agreeing with the Immortal Palace Grand Elder. Seeing their expressions, Murong Yu sneered in his heart. How could he not know what the three of them were thinking? In Sun Lu's words, Murong Yu's military merits were enough for him to become a lieutenant general. However, the other three did not want Murong Yu to become a lieutenant general. One had to know that although a lieutenant general was only the lowest level of general, it was still a high-ranking officer in the army. In addition to having a lot of resources and power, once one became a high-ranking officer in the army, it would be easier to obtain military merits in the future and be promoted. The current Immortal Realm Alliance was jointly ruled by the four forces. None of the forces wanted to see the promotion of someone from another force. Some of the lower-level positions were fine, but they were not willing to be promoted to a high-ranking officer. Murong Yu was from the Heavenly Punisher Palace. The Immortal Palace, the Devil's Sect, and the Holy Gate naturally would not let Murong Yu become a lieutenant general. In fact, Murong Yu knew that if it weren't for his identity as a disciple of the Heavenly Punishing Palace, he might not have been able to obtain anything even with so many military contributions. Instead, these people would have found an excuse to take him away. However, Murong Yu did not say anything. He knew that he was definitely going to be a lieutenant general today. It was because he was a disciple of the Heavenly Punisher Palace and a Punisher. Sure enough, Sun Lu's face darkened when he heard the three Grand Elders of the Immortal Palace. At the same time, he said in a deep voice, "What's there to discuss? Can't we make him a lieutenant general with our full strength? Or are you deliberately making things difficult for him? Ha! Why would we make things difficult for him? Mo got such a big military merit. He's a talent, the hope of our alliance. Why would we make things difficult for him? The reason for this discussion is to inform the military department. This is part of the procedure. The Holy Gate's Grand Elder laughed heartily as he explained. The Grand Elder of our Military Merit Hall has the authority to directly confer the title of Lieutenant General. Mo's military exploits are amazing. He will definitely be promoted to Lieutenant General. There is no doubt about that. As he spoke, a set of clothes and an identity token appeared in Sun Lu's hand. As for reporting to the military, I'll naturally do so. When the time comes, the military will reward you accordingly, Sun Lu said in a deep voice. At the same time, he gave the set of clothes and the token to Murong Yu. Mo, from now on, you're the Lieutenant General. You belong to the higher-ups of the military department. You should return to the scout camp and continue to serve under Great General Sun Haoshan. Sun Haoshan is also an enforcer of our Heavenly Punisher Palace. It would be best for you to work under him. Murong Yu took the clothes and the identity token. Then, he took his leave. Sun Lu, you're too presumptuous. After Murong Yu left, the other three forces' Grand Elders flew into a rage. Mo's military exploits. If we really calculated, it wouldn't be excessive to confer him the title of Lieutenant General. You guys dare to make things difficult for a mere Lieutenant General? You guys better not go overboard. Otherwise, it won't be good for you guys in the future. Sun Lu said indifferently. Oomph. The other three snorted coldly and did not say anything else. In fact, according to the rules, they had the authority to do so. Moreover, since it was already a fact, it was useless for them to continue arguing. Could it be that they could forget about Murong Yu's Lieutenant General status? Moreover, since someone like Murong Yu appeared in the Heavenly Punisher Palace, it was hard to guarantee that there wouldn't be someone like him in the other forces. If they were to make things too awkward now, it would be difficult for them if their people were to face the same situation in the future. Becoming a Lieutenant General, just like that, that's really simple. Murong Yu threw the set of clothes and identity medallion into the Hichu Luoshu world and walked toward the scout camp. However, strictly speaking, a Lieutenant General isn't considered a high-ranking officer. He's just an ordinary middle-ranking officer. At the very least, he has to become a Cheiji General to be considered a high-ranking officer. Of course, if he handed over Zheng Weiyou's two Immortal Venerables identity medallions, he would probably be conferred the title of Cheiji General. However, that would be too shocking, and he might even expose his identity. It's not worth it. I'll continue to mingle in the camp and slowly raise my status. At the same time, I'll gather information about the other enforcers. In the following time, Murong Yu continued to mingle in the scout camp. However, what puzzled him was that the news of him becoming a Lieutenant General had already spread in the scout camp. However, the Grand General Sun Haoshan, the commander of the scout camp, did not summon him. In fact, he didn't even assign a military camp to Murong Yu. It should be known that a general had his own private army. Even if he was just a lieutenant general, he had a few battalions of soldiers under him. A battalion of soldiers was not like the hundreds or thousands of soldiers in the mortal world. In the Immortal Realm Alliance, there were hundreds of millions or even billions of soldiers. However, Murong Yu had become a lieutenant general, but he didn't even have a single soldier. He couldn't help but feel puzzled and depressed, although he didn't need these soldiers. In the blink of an eye, half a year had passed. In this half a year, the Emperor Breakthrough Pill was produced one after another. Murong Yu already had millions of immortal emperors under his command. At the same time, Murong Yu also frequently mingled in the battlefield, and his stars and military merits were constantly rising. His stars had once again broken through 10 billion. However, what made him depressed was that these 10 billion stars were not enough for him to raise his cultivation level. To raise his cultivation level from the Immortal King realm to the Immortal Monarch realm, he needed 100 billion stars. And to raise his cultivation level from the Immortal Monarch realm to the Immortal Emperor realm, he needed 10 trillion stars, which was 10 trillion stars. Murong Yu's stars had not even reached 100 billion stars, let alone 10 trillion stars. Even if he raised his cultivation level from the early stage Immortal Monarch realm to the mid-stage Immortal Monarch realm, he still needed 50 billion stars. Scam, it was really too much of a scam. Sometimes, Murong Yu couldn't help but think of the first owner of the Heavenly Punishment Order. It was said that that guy's strength increased extremely quickly, and it was shocking. Murong Yu thought, could it be that there were especially many villains at that time? Were the villains' stars especially high? Killing one villainous person would give him billions or tens of billions of stars. Otherwise, how could he raise his strength so easily? Or it could be the guy kept slaughtering cities. There's news about Butler Ma. Could it be news about the Enforcer? Murong Yu's heart suddenly moved, and then he disappeared on the spot. When he reappeared, Murong Yu was already in the heavenly court of Southern Mountains. Butler Ma, is there any news about the Enforcer? Murong Yu asked hurriedly. Palace Master, I didn't let you down. I found the identity of Enforcer. As he spoke, Butler Ma's spiritual consciousness fluctuated, and he directly transmitted it to Murong Yu. Good. The most important person in the scout camp is actually not an immortal supremacy. Murong Yu laughed and praised Butler Ma. After asking him to continue investigating, he once again returned to the Dajo scout camp. Gung Yu, General Che Ji of the scout camp, has the strength of a late-stage immortal emperor. He was once chased by an immortal supremacy of the Divine Union, but he managed to escape with his life. Information about Gung Yu appeared in Murong Yu's mind. Gung Yu is the enforcer of the Tian Yuan cultivation realm. He was General Che Ji and belonged to the upper echelons of the Immortal Realm Alliance. Sun Haoshan is currently missing, and the other party is an immortal supremacy. If we kill him, the world will change. We will be discovered immediately. Gung Yu is not an immortal supremacy, so killing him won't be a problem. However, if we want to kill him, we have to find out more about him first. Given Murong Yu's status, it was usually difficult for him to come into contact with the real higher-ups. His identity token is vibrating. The military camp is starting to gather everyone. What a coincidence! Murong Yu was delighted as he hurriedly flew towards the central tent. By the time Murong Yu arrived at the central tent, there were already many people inside. Furthermore, there was an endless stream of people flying over. Half a day later, more than 1 million people had already gathered in the central tent. The lowest-ranking person among these people was a lieutenant general. This made Murong Yu feel a little ashamed. Although he was a general, he was actually the person with the lowest rank present. Furthermore, he was the lowest early-stage immortal lord. After all, the weakest among the others was an immortal emperor. There were even very few early-stage immortal emperors. However, this also made him very curious. Why had they been gathered this time? Since the lowest-ranking person was a lieutenant general, something big must have happened. However, they were in the scout camp. Something big must have happened in the Divine Union. Murong Yu's gaze kept scanning the front of the central tent. These people were the higher-ups of the scout camp. They were all Cheiji generals, agile cavalry generals, and so on. Finally, Murong Yu's gaze paused on a man who had a sinister expression and was exuding a gloomy, killing intent. This person is Gung Yu. I can already sense the origin source aura on his body. I'm getting a little excited. Murong Yu felt the origin source aura on Gung Yu's body. He wanted nothing more than to rush over and unleash his most ferocious attacks to kill him. This was because Murong Yu felt that as long as he killed Gung Yu, he would definitely be able to break through his current cultivation base and reach the mid-stage Immortal Lord realm. Cough. A dry cough was heard as a person appeared on the seat in front of the central tent. It was the chief commander of the scout camp, Great General Sun Haoshan. This guy is injured. No wonder he hasn't shown himself during this period. However, this is an excellent opportunity. I don't know if he wants to go out on mission this time. Otherwise, I will find a chance to kill him. Murong Yu looked at Sun Haoshan, thinking about how to find a chance to kill the chief commander. No, Sun Hao Shan is the chief commander of the scout camp. He has a lot of troops in his hands. If I kill him, the Immortal Realm Alliance will definitely investigate. When that happens, I will probably be found out. If I were to subdue him, then I would be in control of the entire scout camp. Yes, his injury this time is an opportunity. I will find a chance to subdue him. However, I have to kill Gung Yu and break through first. That way, I will reach 1 million Earth Dragon power and catch up to Sun Hao Shan. Morongyu muttered to himself. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.